turned to night, his eyes glinted in the dark. Like a wolf's, she thought. And it was a wolf, she remembered, she was to trust. Your world is relatively small, Eve. You couldn't call it sheltered, but it's limited. You haven't seen a giant's dance, or felt the power of the ancient stones. You haven't run your hand over the oyam carving in the trunk of a tree petrified by time, or heard the sounds that whisper through the mist that coats sacred ground. Baffled, she shook her head. It's what, an Irish thing? If you like, though it's certainly not limited to a single race or culture. You are grounded. He ran his hands up her arms to her shoulders. Almost brutal in your focus and your honesty, and I've lived, let's say, a flexible life. I need you, and I'll use whatever comes to hand to keep you safe. He lifted the ring to his lips. Let's just call it covering the bases. Okay. This was a new aspect of him. It would take time to explore. But you don't have, like, a secret room where you dance around naked and chant. He tucked his tongue in his cheek. I did, but I turned it into a den. More versatile. Good thinking. Okay, let's eat. Thank God. He took her hand and tugged her toward the house. Chapter 7. The Athame slicked a high-gloss sheen over depravity, like the baby-kissing smile on a corrupt politician. One scan convinced Eve she'd have preferred to spend an evening in a low-level dive, smelling stale liquor and staler sweat. Dives didn't bother with disguises. Revolving balconies of smoky glass and chrome trim ringed the main level in 2 tiers, so that those who preferred a loftier view could circle slowly and check out the action. The central bar speared out in 5 points, and each was crowded with patrons perched on high stools fashioned to resemble optimistically exaggerated body parts. A couple of women, decked out in micro-skirts, sat spread-legged on a pair of bulging, flesh-toned cocks and laughed uproariously. A skin-headed bar surfer checked them out by prying his hand down their snug blouses. All the walls were mirrored, and they pulsed with cloudy red lights. Some of the tables flanking the dance floor were tubed for privacy. Some were smoked, so that silhouettes of couples in various states of fornication wavered against the glass to entertain the crowd, and all were coated with a shiny black lacquer that made them resemble small dark pools. On a raised platform, the band pumped out harsh and clever rock. Eve wondered what Mavis would think of their wildly painted faces, tattooed chests, and black leather codpieces studded with silver spikes. She decided her friend would probably have dubbed them Mag. "Do we sit?" Rourke murmured in her ear, "or case the joint?" "We go up," she decided, "for the overview." "What's that smell?" He stepped onto the auto stairs with her. "Cannabis? Incense, sweat." She shook her head. There was something under that mix, something metallic. Blood. Fresh blood. He'd caught it as well. That broody underlayer. In a place like this, they put it in the air vents for mood enhancement. Charming. They stepped off onto the second level. Here, rather than tables and chairs, there were floor pillows and thick rugs where patrons could lounge as they sipped their brew of choice. Those on the prowl leaned on the ornate chrome rail, scoping, Eve imagined, for a likely partner to lure into one of the privacy rooms. There were a dozen such rooms on this level, all with heavy black doors bearing chrome plaques with such names as Perdition, Leviathan, and, more direct in Eve's opinion, Hell and Damnation. She could too easily imagine the personality type who would find such invitations seductive. As she watched, a man whose eyes were glazed with liquor began to slurp his way up his companion's legs. His hand snuck under her crotch-skimming skirt as she giggled. Technically, Eve could have busted them both for engaging in a sexual act in public. "What would be the point?" Rourke commented, reading her perfectly. His voice was mild. Anyone taking a casual glance would have seen a man faintly bored with the ambiance. But he was braced to attack or defend, whichever became necessary. You've got more interesting things to do than toss a horny couple from Queens in lockup. That wasn't really the point, Eve thought, as the man tugged apart the self-stick fly on his baggy blue trousers. How do you know they're from Queens? Before he could answer, a young, attractive man with a flowing mane of blonde hair and bare, gleaming shoulders hunkered down beside the busy couple. Whatever he said had the woman giggling again, then grabbing him into a sloppy kiss. "Why don't you come too?" she demanded in an unmistakable accent. "We could have ourselves a ménage à trois." Eve lifted a brow at the borough massacre of the French term, and at the easy skill with which the bouncer disengaged himself and led the staggering couple off. "Queens," Rourke said smugly. "Definitely." And that was smoothly done. He inclined his head as the couple was taken through a narrow door. They'd add the price of the privacy room to the tab, and no harm done. There was a scream of female laughter as the bouncer came back out and secured the door. Everyone's happy. Queens might not be in the morning. The cost of a privacy room in a place like this has to hurt. Then again, she scanned the crowd. Ages varied from the very young, many of whom she was sure had gained entrance with forged ID, to the very mature. But from the wardrobe and jewelry, the tone of faces and bodies that silly hinted at salon enhancements, the clientele was solidly upper middle class. Money doesn't look to be a problem here. I've spotted at least 5 high-credit licensed companions. My count was more like 10. She quirked a brow. 12 bouncers with low-grade palm zappers. On that count, we agree. He slipped an arm around her waist and walked to the rail. Below, the dance floor was packed, bodies rubbing suggestively against bodies. Wild laughter bounced off the mirrored walls and shot upward. The band was into their performance mode. The 2 female vocalists were being bound to dangling silver chains with leather straps. The music pounded, heavy on the drums. The dancers surged forward, closing in, as eager as a mob at a lynching. Audience participation was realized as a man was brought forward and accepted the invitation to strip the women out of their flimsy robes. Beneath, they were naked, but for glittery stars over nipples and pubes. The crowd began to chant and howl as he coated them with thick oil, and they writhed and screamed and begged for mercy. "That's skirting the line," Eve muttered. "Performance art." Rourke watched the man scourge the first vocalist with a velvet cat-o'-nine-tails. Still within the law. A simulation of debasement encourages the real thing. She set her teeth as a band member began to lightly slap the second vocalist as their voices soared in fervent duet. "We're supposed to be beyond this kind of female exploitation, but we're not. We never are." What are they looking for? Thrills, of the cheaper and meaner variety. His hand soothed the base of her back. She knew what it was to be bound, to be abused. There was nothing artful and nothing entertaining about it. There's no need to watch this, Eve. What makes them do it? She wondered. What makes a woman let herself be used that way, in simulation or in reality? Why doesn't she kick his balls into his throat? She's not you. He kissed her on the brow and firmly turned her away. The railing was thick with people, now straining to see the show. As they took a quick tour of the top floor, a woman in a sheer black gown glided up to them. "Welcome to the master's level. Do you have a reservation?" Enough was enough, Eve thought. She flipped out her badge. "I'm not interested in what you're selling here." "Fine food and wine," the hostess said, after only a quick hitch at the sight of police identification. "You'll find we're completely within code here, Lieutenant. However, if you wish to speak with the owner, I've already done that. I want to see Lobar. Where do I find him?" "He doesn't work this level." With the subtlety and discretion that would have made the poshest maitre d' proud, the hostess steered Eve back toward the stairs. "If you will go to the main level, you will be met, and a table provided. I'll contact Lobar and send him to you." "Fine." Eve studied her, saw an attractive woman in her mid-20s. "Why do you do this?" she asked, and glanced at one of the screens where a woman screamed and struggled as she was strapped to a raised slab of marble. How can you do this?" The hostess merely glanced down at Eve's badge, then smiled sweetly. "How can you do that?" she countered, and drifted away. "I'm letting it get to me," Eve admitted as they headed down to the main level. "I know better." The band continued to play, the music a frenzy now, but the performance aspect had switched to a huge view screen that filled the wall behind the stage. It took Eve only a glance to see why. The club wasn't licensed for live sex acts, but such minor inconveniences were transcended by video. The female vocalists were still bound, still singing their hearts out without missing a beat, but they were behind the stage now, on camera, along with a man from the audience and a second man who wore nothing but an ornate mask of a boar's head. "Pigs," was all Eve had to say, then looked into gleaming red eyes. "Your table is this way." The young man smiled, revealing gleaming teeth with incisors sharpened to vicious fangs. He turned. His hair streamed down his naked back, black, tipped with red-like flames. He opened the rounded door on a privacy tube, stepped in ahead of them. "I'm Lobar," he grinned again. "I've been expecting you." He might have been pretty without the affectation of vampire fangs and demon eyes. As it was, Eve thought, he looked like an overgrown child dressed up for Halloween. If he was of legal age, she deduced it couldn't have been by much. His chest was thin and hairless, his arms slim as a girl's, but she didn't think it was the red tint of his eyes that took away his innocence. It was the look in them. "Sit down, Lobar." "Sure." He dropped into a chair. "I'll have a drink." "You're buying," he told Eve. "You want my time during work hours, you gotta pay." He punched out a selection on the electronic menu, adjusted his chair so that he could see the view screen. "Great show tonight." Eve glanced over. "The script could use work," she said dryly. "You got ID, Lobar?" He peeled his lips back from his fangs, lifted his hands, palm out. "Not on me, unless you think I got secret pockets in my skin." "What's your legal name?" His smile disappeared, and his eyes were suddenly the sulky eyes of a child. "It's Lobar. That's who I am. I don't have to answer your questions, you know. I'm cooperating." "You're a real sterling citizen." Eve waited while his drink slid out of the serving slot. Another show, she mused, as the heavy glass chalice smoked with some murky gray brew. "Alice Lingstrom. What do you know about her?" "Not much, except she was a dumb bitch." He sipped the drink. "She hung around for a while, then went crying off. It was fine with me. The master doesn't need any weaklings." "The master." He sipped again, smiled. "Satan," he said, relishing it. "You believe in Satan?" "Sure." He leaned forward, slid his hand with its long, black-painted nails toward Eve. "And he believes in you." "Careful," Rourke murmured. "You're too young and stupid to lose a hand." Lobar snorted, but he slid his hand back again. "You're watchdog," he said to Eve. "You're rich watchdog." "We know who you are," he added, fixing his red eyes on Rourke. "Big fucking deal. You don't have any power here, and neither does your cop bitch." "I'm not his cop bitch," Eve said mildly, shooting a warning glance at Rourke. "I'm my own cop bitch. And as to power," she leaned back, "well, I've got the power to take you down to Cop Central and slap you into interview." She smiled, letting her gaze run over the naked chest and gleaming nipple rings. "The guys would just love to get a load of you. Cute, isn't he, Rourke?" "In an apprentice demon sort of fashion. You must have a very interesting dentist." As it was a privacy booth, he took out a cigarette, lighted it. "I could use one of those," Lobar said. "Could you?" With a shrug, Rourke slid another cigarette onto the table. When Lobar picked it up, looked at him expectantly, Rourke grinned. "Sorry, you want a light? I assumed you'd shoot flame out of your fingertips." "I don't do tricks for straights." Lobar leaned forward, sucking on the filter as Rourke flicked his lighter at the tip. "Look, you want to know about Alice? And I can't help you. She wasn't my type. Too inhibited, and always asking questions. Sure, I banged her a couple of times, but those were like community fucks, you know? Nothing personal. And on the night she was killed, he blew out smoke, sucked more in. He hadn't had real tobacco before, and the expensive drug made him lightheaded and relaxed. Never saw her. I was busy. I had a private ceremony with Selina and Alban. Sexual rites. After, we fucked around most of the night. He took another deep drag, holding it in as he would a toke from a prime joint, then exhaling lustily through his nostrils. Selina likes double bangers, and when she's done, she likes to watch and get herself off. Was dawn easy before she'd had enough. And the three of you were together the entire night. No one left, even for a few minutes. He moved his bony shoulders. That's the thing about three people. No waiting. He lowered his gaze suggestively to her breasts. Want to try it? You don't want to solicit a cop, Lobar. And I like men, not skinny boys in silly costumes. Who called Alice and played the recording? The chant. He was sulky again, his ego pricked. If she'd come alone, he thought, he'd have shown her a few things. A bitch was a bitch as far as he was concerned, badge or no badge. I don't know what you're talking about. Alice was nothing. Nobody gave a shit about her. Her grandfather did. Heard he was dead, too. The red eyes gleamed. Old fart. Desk cop, button pusher, means nothing to me. Enough to know he was a cop, Eve put in. A cop who rode a desk. How'd you know that, Lobar? Realizing his mistake, he crushed out what was left of the cigarette in quick, vicious little jabs. Somebody must have mentioned it. He exposed his fangs in a wide grin. Probably Alice did when I was banging her. Doesn't say much for your performance rating, does it? If she was talking about her grandfather when you were banging her? I heard it somewhere, all right? He grabbed his drink, gulped deeply. What's the big fucking deal? Where? He was old, anyway. Did you ever see him? In here? I see a lot of people in here. I don't remember any old cop. He waved a hand. Place rocks like this most every night. How the hell do I know who comes in? Selina hired me to keep the occasional asshole in line, not to remember faces. Selina's got quite the enterprise going here. Is she still dealing? She deal for you? His eyes went sly. I get power from my beliefs. I don't need illegals. Have you ever participated in human sacrifice? Ever slice up a child for your master, Lobar? He polished off his drink. That's an outsider's hallucination. People like you like to make Satanists out to be monsters. People like us, Rourke murmured, skimming his gaze over Lobar from the fire-tipped hair to the nipple rings. Yes, obviously, we're biased when anyone can see you're simply devout. Look, it's a religion, and we've got freedom of religion in this country. You want to push your God down our throats? Well, we reject him. We reject him and all his weak-kneed creeds, and we'll rule in hell. He shoved back from the table and stood. I've got nothing more to say. All right. Eve spoke quietly, looking up into his eyes. But you think about this, Lobar. People are dead. Somebody's going to be next. It might just be you. His lips trembled, then firmed. It might just be you, he shot back, and slammed out of the booth. What an attractive young man, Rourke commented. I do believe he'll be a delightful addition to hell. That may be where he's going. After a quick glance around, Eve nudged the empty glass into her bag. I want to find out where he came from. I can run his prints at home. Fine. He rose, took her arm. But I want a shower first. This place leaves something nasty coated on the skin. I can't argue with that. Robert Allen Matthias, Eve stated, reading data off her monitor. Turned 18 6 months ago. Born in Kansas City, Kansas, son of Jonathan and Elaine Matthias, both of whom are Baptist deacons. A PK, Rourke put in. Preacher's kid. Some can rebel in extreme manners. It looks like little Bobby has. History of problems, Eve continued. I got his juvie file here. Petty theft, break-in, truancy, assault. Ran away from home 4 times before he hit 13. At 15, after a joyride that landed him a grand theft auto, his parents had him termed legally incorrigible. Did a year at a state school, which ended with him being kicked to a state institution after an attempted rape on a teacher. "Bobby's a sweetheart," Rourke murmured. "I knew there was a reason I wanted to jab his little red eyes out. They kept latching onto your breasts." "Yeah." Unconsciously, Eve rubbed a hand over them as if to erase something vile. Psych profile's pretty much what you'd expect. Sociopathic tendencies, lack of control, violent mood swings. Subject harbors deep, unresolved resentment toward parents and authority figures, particularly female. Displays both fear and resentment toward females. Intelligence rating high, violence quotient high. Subject displays complete lack of conscience and an abnormal interest in the occult. Then what is he doing out on the street? Why isn't he in treatment? Because it's the law. You have to kick him when he turns 18. Until you nail him as an adult, he's clear. Eve puffed out her cheeks, blew out the air. He's a dangerous little bastard, but there's not much I can do about him. He corroborates Selina's statement for the night of Alice's death. He'd have been instructed to, Rourke pointed out. Still sticks, unless I can break it. She pushed back. I've got his current address. I can check it out, knock on doors, see if his neighbors can give me something on him. If I can get him in on something, lay on some pressure, I think little Bobby would break. Otherwise we keep digging. She rubbed her eyes. We'll deal with him. Sooner or later, he'll revert to type, bust somebody's face, assault some woman, kick the wrong ass. Then we'll lock him in a cage. Your job is miserable. Most of the time, she agreed, then looked over her shoulder. Are you tired? Depends. He glanced at the screen where Lobar's data scrolled. He had an image of her diving deeper, spending the quiet hours of night wading through the muck. He didn't bother to sigh. What do you need? You. She could feel her color rise as he lifted a curious brow. I know it's late, and it's been a long day. I guess I was thinking of it kind of like the shower, something to wash away the grime. Embarrassed, she turned back, stared hard at the screen. Stupid. It was always hard for her to ask, he mused, for anything. Not the most romantic proposal I've ever had. He laid his hands on her shoulders, massaged gently, but far from stupid. Disengage, he ordered, and the screen went dark. He turned her chair around, drew her to her feet. Come to bed. Rourke. She put her arms around him, held tight. She couldn't explain how or why the images she'd seen that night had left something inside her shaky. With him, she didn't have to. I love you. Smiling a little, she lifted her head and looked into his eyes. It's getting easier to say. I think I'm starting to like it. With a short laugh, he pressed a kiss to her chin. Come to bed, he repeated, and say it again. The rite was ancient, its purpose dark. Cloaked and masked, the coven gathered in the private chamber. The scent of blood was fresh and strong. The flames spearing above black candles flickered to send shadows slithering over the walls like spiders hunting prey. Selina chose to be the altar, and lay naked, a candle burning between her thighs, a bowl of sacrificial blood nestled between her generous breasts. She smiled as she glanced toward the silver bowl overflowing with the cash and credits the membership had paid for the privilege to belong. Their wealth was now her wealth. The master had saved her from a scrabbling life on the streets and brought her here into power and into comfort. She had gladly traded her soul for them. Tonight there would be more. Tonight there would be death, and the power that came from the rending of flesh, the spilling of blood. They would not remember, she thought. She had added drugs to the blood-laced wine. With the right drugs, in the right dosage, they would do and say and be what the master wanted. Only she and Alban would know that the master had demanded sacrifice for his protection, and the demand had been happily met. The coven circled her, their faces hooded, their bodies swaying as the drug, the smoke, the chanting hypnotized them. At her head stood Alban, with the boar's mask and the athame. "We worship the One," he said in his clear and beautiful voice. And the coven answered, "Satan is the One. What is his is ours. Ave Satan!" As Alban lifted the bowl, his eyes met Selina's. He took up a sword, thrust it at the 4 points of the compass. The princes of hell were called, the list long and exotic. Voices were ahum. Fire crackled in a blackened pot set on a marble slab. She began to moan. "Destroy our enemies." Yes, she thought, destroy. Bring sickness and pain on those who would harm us. Great pain, unbearable pain. When Alban laid a hand on her flesh, she began to scream. "We take what we wish in your name. Death to the weak, fortune to the strong." He stepped back, and though it was his right to take the altar first, he gestured to Lobar. "Reward to the loyal. Take her," he commanded. "Give her pain as well as pleasure." Lobar hesitated a moment. The sacrifice should have come first. The blood sacrifice. The goat should have been brought out and slaughtered. He looked at Selina, and his drug-clouded brain shut off. There was woman. Bitch. She watched him with cold, taunting eyes. He would show her, he thought. He would show her he was a man. It wouldn't be like the last time when she had used and humiliated him. This time, he would be in charge. He cast aside his robe and stepped forward. Chapter 8. The steady beep of an alarm had Eve rolling over and cursing. "It can't be time to get up. We just went to bed." "It's not. That's security." "What?" Now she sat up quickly. "Our security?" Rourke was already out of bed, already pulling on slacks, and answered with a grunt. Instinctively, Eve reached for her weapon first, clothes second. "Someone's trying to break in?" "Apparently, someone has." His voice was very calm. As the lights were still off, she could see only his silhouette in the scattered light of the moon through the sky window, and joining that silhouette was the unmistakable outline of a gun in his hand. "Where the hell did you get that?" "I thought they were all locked up. God damn it, Rourke, that's illegal. Put it away." Coolly, he plugged around into the chamber of the antique and banned for use Glock 9mm. "No." Damn it. She snatched up her communicator, shoved it in the back pocket of her jeans, out of habit. "You can't use that thing. I'll check it out. That's my job. You call dispatch, report a possible intruder." "No," he said again, and started for the door. She was on him in 2 steps. "If someone's on the grounds or in the house, and if you shoot him with that, I'm going to have to arrest you." "Fine." "Rourke!" She grabbed at him as he reached for the door. "There's procedure for something like this, and reasons for that procedure. Call it in." His home, he thought. Their home. His woman. And the fact that she was a cop didn't mean a damn at the moment. "And won't you feel foolish, Lieutenant, if it's a mechanical malfunction?" "Nothing of yours ever malfunctions," she muttered, and made him smile despite the circumstances. "Why, thank you." He opened the door, and there was Somerset. "It appears someone is on the grounds." "Where's the breach?" "Section 15, southwest quadrant." "Run a full video scan. Employ full house security when we're out. Eve and I will check the grounds." Absently, he ran a hand down her back. "A good thing I live with a cop." She looked down at the gun in his hand. Attempting to disarm him would likely prove unsuccessful, and it would take too much time. "We're going to talk about this," she said between her teeth. "I mean it." "Of course you do." They went side by side down the stairs, through the now silent house. "They haven't gotten in," he said as he paused by a door leading onto a wide patio. "The alarm for a breach of the house is different. But they're over the wall." "Which means they could be anywhere." The moon was waxing toward full, but the clouds were thick and shadowed its light. Eve scanned the dark. The sheltering trees, the huge ornamental bushes, all provided excellent cover for observation. Or ambush. She heard nothing but the air teasing leaves going brittle with age. "We'll have to separate. For Christ's sake, don't use that weapon unless your life's threatened. Most B&E men aren't armed." And most B&E men, they both knew, didn't attempt to ply their trade on a man like Rourke. "Be careful," he said quietly, and slipped like smoke into the shadows. He was good, Eve assured herself. She could trust him to handle himself and the situation. Using the dim and shifting moonlight as a guide, she headed west, then began to circle. The quiet was almost eerie. She could barely hear her own footsteps on the thick grass. Behind her, the house stood in darkness, a formidable structure of old stone and glass, guarded, she thought, by a skinny snob of a butler. Her lips curled. She'd love to see an unsuspecting burglar come up against Somerset. When she reached the wall, she scanned for any breach. It was 8 feet high, 3 feet thick, and wired to deliver a discouraging electric shock to anything over 20 pounds. Security cameras and lights were set every 12 feet. She whispered out an oath when she noted the narrow beams were blinking red rather than green. Disengaged, son of a bitch. Weapon drawn and ready, she circled to the... Rourke did his own circuit in silence, using the trees. He'd bought this property 8 years before, had it remodeled and rehabbed to his specifications. He'd supervised the design and implementation of the security system personally. It was, in a very real sense, his first home, the place he'd chosen to settle after too many years of wandering. Beneath the icy control, as he slipped from shadow to shadow, was a bubbling, grinding fury that his home had been invaded. The night was cool, clear, quiet as a tomb. He wondered if he was up against a very ballsy thief. It could be as simple as that, or it could be someone much more dangerous. A pro hired by a business competitor, an enemy, and he hadn't fought his way to where he was without making them, particularly since many of his interests had been on the dark side of the law. Or the target could be Eve. She, too, had made enemies, dangerous enemies. He glanced over his shoulder, hesitated, then told himself not to second-guess his wife. He knew of no one better equipped to take care of herself. But it was that hesitation, that instinctive need to protect, that turned his luck. As he paused in the shadows, he caught the faint sound of movement. Rourke took a firmer grip on the gun, stepped back, stepped to the side, and waited. The figure was moving slowly, in a crouch. As the distance between them melted away, Rourke could hear the puff of nervous breathing. Though he couldn't make out features, he judged male, perhaps 5'10", and on the lean side. He could see no weapons, and thinking of the difficulty Eve might have explaining why her husband had held off an intruder with a banned handgun, tucked the Glock into the back of his slacks. He braced, looking forward to a little hand-to-hand, then lunged when the figure slunk by. Rourke had an arm around a throat, a fist clenched and raised in anticipation of quiet, perhaps petty revenge, when he realized it wasn't a man, but a boy. "Hey, you son of a bitch, let go! I'll kill you!" A very rude and very frightened boy, Rourke decided. The struggle was short and all one-sided. It took seconds only for Rourke to pin the boy against the trunk of a tree. "How the hell did you get inside?" Rourke demanded. The kid's breath was coming in whistles, and his face was pale as a ghost. Rourke could hear the audible click in his throat as he swallowed. "You're Rourke!" He stopped struggling and tried to smirk. "You've got pretty good security." "I like to think so." Not a thief, Rourke decided, but ballsy, certainly. "How did you get past it?" He broke off, eyes going huge as they shot over Rourke's shoulder. "Behind you!" With a smoothness the boy would later appreciate, Rourke pivoted, keeping his grip unbreakable. "We have our intruder, Lieutenant." "So I see." She lowered her weapon, ordered her heart to slow to normal. "Jesus, Rourke, it's just a kid, She stopped, narrowed her eyes. "I know this kid." "Then perhaps you'll introduce us." "It's Jamie, right? Jamie Lingstrom, Alice's brother. Good eye, Lieutenant. Now you want to tell him to stop choking me? I don't think so. She holstered her weapon, stepped up. What the hell are you doing, breaking into private property in the middle of the night? You're a cop's grandson, for Christ's sake. You want to end up in juvie? I'm not your big problem right now, Lieutenant Dallas. He made a valiant attempt to sound tough, but his voice wavered. You've got a dead body outside the wall. Really dead, he added, and began to shake. Did you kill someone, Jamie? Rourke asked mildly. No, man, no way. He was there when I came by. Terrified his stomach would revolt and humiliate him, Jamie swallowed hard again. I'll show you. If it was a trick, Eve considered it a fine one. She couldn't take a chance. All right, let's go, and if you try to run, pal, I'll zap you. Wouldn't make any sense to run, would it, when I went to all this trouble to get in? This way. His legs were rubber, and he sincerely hoped neither of them noticed that his knees kept knocking together. I'd like to know how you got in, Rourke said as they headed for the main gate. How you bypass security. I fool around with electronics. A hobby. You've got a really high-grade system, the best. So I thought. I guess I didn't engage all the alarms. Jamie turned his head, tried another weak smile. You knew I was here. You got in, Rourke repeated. How? This. Jamie pulled a small, palm-sized unit out of his pocket. It's a jammer I've been working on for a couple of years. It'll read most systems, he began, frowning when Rourke plucked it out of his hand. When you engage this, he continued, leaning over to point, it'll scan the chips, run a cloning program. Then it's just a matter of backing out the program step by step. Takes some time, but it's pretty efficient. Rourke stared at the mechanism. It was no bigger than one of the E-games one of his companies manufactured. Indeed, the casing looked distressingly familiar. You adapted a game unit into a jammer? Yourself? One that read and cloned and breached my security? Well, most of it. Jamie's eyes clouded in annoyance. I must have missed something. One of the backups, maybe. Your system must be ultra-mag. I'd like to see it. Not in this lifetime, Rourke muttered, and shoved the unit into his pocket. When they reached the gates, he disengaged and opened them manually, sliding a narrow look at Jamie as the boy craned over his shoulder to see. Way impressive, Jamie commented. I didn't figure I could get through this way. That's why I had to come over the wall. Needed a ladder. Rourke simply closed his eyes. A ladder, he said to no one in particular. He climbed up a ladder. Lovely. And the cameras? Oh, I blanked them from across the street. The unit's got a range of 10 yards. Lieutenant, Rourke snagged Jamie by the collar. I want him punished. Later. Now where's this body you're supposed to have seen? The cocky smile fell away from his face. To the left, he told her, paling again. Keep a hold of him, Rourke. Stay here. I've got him, Rourke replied, but he'd be damned if he'd stay back. He tugged Jamie through the gate, met Eve's annoyed stare blandly. Our home, our problem. She said something nasty under her breath and turned left. She didn't have to go far. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't subtle. The body was naked and strapped to a wooden form in the shape of a star. No, she realized, a pentagram. Inverted so that the head with its dead doll eyes and gaping throat hung over the bloody sidewalk. The arms were outstretched, the legs parted in a wide V. The center of his chest was a mass of black blood and gore, the whole hacked out of it, bigger than a man's fist. She doubted the ME would find a heart inside when he opened the body for autopsy. She heard the choked sound behind her and turned to see Rourke shift his grip on Jamie and step over to shield the boy from the view. Lobar, was all he said. Yeah. She stepped closer. Whoever had taken his heart had also plunged a knife through a sheet of paper and through his groin. It said, Devil worshipper, baby killer, burn in hell. Take the boy inside, will you, Rourke? She glanced at the collapsible ladder tilted against the wall. And get rid of that. Pass the kid off to Somerset for now. I can't leave the scene. She turned, her face blank and impassive, her cop face. "Will you bring me my field kit?" "Yes. Come on, Jamie." "I know who he is." Tears swam in Jamie's eyes and were viciously blinked away. "He's one of the bastards who killed my sister. I hope he rots." Because his voice had broken at the end, Rourke slipped an arm around his shoulder. "He will. Come inside. Let the lieutenant do her job." Rourke sent Eve one last look before hefting the ladder and leading Jamie back through the gates. With her gaze still fixed on the body, Eve pulled out her communicator. "Dispatch. Dallas, Lieutenant Eve." "Dispatch. Acknowledged." "Reporting homicide. Requesting assistance." She gave the necessary data, then replaced her communicator. Turning, she stared across the wide, quiet street into the dark, shifting shadows of the great park. In the east, the sky was stripping off the first layers of night, and the stars, such as they were blinking out. Murder had come into her life before and would again, but someone would pay for bringing it into her home. She turned as Rourke approached, not only with her field kit, but her battered leather jacket. "It gets chilly this close to dawn," he said, and handed it to her. "Thanks. Jamie all right?" "He and Somerset are eyeing each other with mutual dislike and distrust. I knew I liked that kid." "You can go inside and referee," she told him as she took out Seal-It and clear-coated her hands, her boots. "I've called it in. I'm staying." Since she'd already figured he would, she didn't argue. "Then make yourself useful and record the scene." She took her recorder out of the kit, passed it to him, then covered his hand with hers. "I'm sorry." "You're too smart to be sorry for something that isn't your responsibility." "He wasn't killed here, was he?" "No." Confident that Rourke could function as her aide until Peabody arrived, Eve approached the body again. Not nearly enough blood. He'd have gushed from the jugular. That was likely the cause of death. We'll find the other wounds are post-mortem. In any case, there'd be splatters all over hell and back. We'd be wading in it. "Record on?" "Yes." "Victim identified as Robert Mathias, a.k.a. Lobar. White male, 18 years of age. Preliminary visual exam indicates death was caused by a sharp-bladed instrument that severed the throat." Shutting off everything but training, she took out a pencil light, examined the chest wound. Additional insults include a wound in the chest, probably inflicted by the same weapon. The victim's heart has been removed. The organ is not on scene. "I need close-ups here," she said to Rourke. She took instruments out of her kit to calibrate. The throat wound is 6¼ inches across, approximately 2 inches deep. Quickly, competently, she measured and recorded the other wounds. A knife, black-handled with carving, was left in the body in the groin area to anchor what appears to be a computer-generated note on treated paper. She heard the shrill sound of sirens coming closer. "Uniforms," she told Rourke. "They'll secure the scene. Not much traffic out this way at this time of night." "Fortunately." The body has been strapped by leather strips to a wooden structure, pentagram shape. The small amount of blood and blood patterns indicate victim was killed and mutilated elsewhere and transported to scene. Perimeter security to be scanned. Possibility of breach onto private property beyond security gate and wall. Body discovered at approximately 4:30 a.m. by Lieutenant Eve Dallas and Rourke, residents. She turned and walked over as the first black and white screeched up to the curb. "I want a privacy screen employed. Now. Block off the street in a 20-foot perimeter. I don't want gawkers here. I don't want the fucking media. Got it?" "Sir." The two uniforms hustled out of the car and to the trunk. They wrestled out the privacy screen. "I'm going to be a while," she told Rourke. Taking the recorder from him, she passed it to another uniform. "You should go inside. Keep an eye on the kid." Wearily, she watched the cruiser cops erect the screen. "He should call his mother or something, but I don't want him to leave until I talk to him again." "I'll take care of it. I'll cancel my appointments for the day. I'll be available." "That would be best." She started to touch him, wanted to badly, then realized her sealed hands were smeared with blood and dropped them again. "It would help if you kept him occupied, kept his mind off of it for now." "God damn it, Rourke, this bites." A ritual killing, he murmured, and, understanding, laid a hand on her cheek. But which side did it? I guess I'm going to be spending a lot of time interviewing witches. She huffed out a breath, then frowned when she saw Peabody striding double-time down the street. Where the hell's your vehicle, officer? Her uniform might have been pressed to within an inch of its life, but her face was flushed and her breathing short. I don't have a vehicle, Lieutenant. I use city transpo. The closest public stop is 4 blocks from here. She slanted a look at Rourke, as though it was his personal responsibility. Rich people don't use public transportation. Well, requisition a damn vehicle, Eve ordered. We'll be in as soon as we're done out here, she told Rourke, then turned away. Bodies behind the screen. Get the recorder from the uniform. I don't trust his eye, and his hands are shaking. I want measurements on the blood pool and stills of the wounds, all angles. Seal up. I don't think the sweepers are going to find much here, but I don't want anything compromised. I'll do the prelim for time of death. The ME's on the way. Rourke watched her march off, flipped through the screen, and figured she was finished with him. Inside the house, he found Jamie, guarded by a visibly irritated Somerset. You will not be allowed free range of this house, Somerset snapped out. You will touch nothing. If you break one piece of crockery, soil 1 centimeter of fabric, I will resort to violence. Jamie continued to pace, continued to paw the statuary in the small, and as Somerset thought of it, lesser parlor. Well, now I'm shaking. You really put the fear of God in me, old man. Your manners continue to disintegrate, Rourke commented as he stepped into the room. Someone should have taught you to show some respect for your elders. Yeah, well, someone should have taught your guard dog to be polite to guests. Guests don't tamper with security systems, climb over walls, and skulk around private property. You are not a guest. Jamie deflated. It was tough to stand up under those cool blue eyes. I wanted to see the lieutenant. I didn't want anyone to know. Next time, try using the link, Rourke suggested. It's all right, Somerset. I'll deal with this. As you wish. Somerset shot Jamie one last withering look, then stalked, stiff-backed, out of the room. Where'd you find Count Boredom? Jamie asked, and slumped into a chair. The morgue? Rourke sat on the arm of a sofa, took out a cigarette. Somerset can eat runts like you for breakfast, he said mildly, and flicked on his lighter. I've seen him. Right. Still, Jamie sent a cautious look toward the doorway. Nothing in this house was what he'd expected, so he wouldn't underestimate the butler. Speaking of breakfast, you got anything to eat around here? It's been like hours since I had anything. Rourke blew out smoke. You want me to feed you now? Well, you know, we gotta hang anyway, might as well eat. Cheeky little bastard, Rourke thought, not without admiration. Only youth, he supposed, could have an appetite after seeing what was outside the wall. And what did you have in mind? Crepes? An omelette? Perhaps a few bowls of sugar-soaked cereal? I was thinking more of pizza, maybe a burger. He fixed on a winning smile. My mom's a real nutrition fanatic. We only get health shit at home. It's 5 a.m, and you want pizza? Pizza goes down smooth any time. You may be right. And he thought he could use something himself, after all. Let's go, then. It's like a museum in here, Jamie said, as he followed Rourke into the hall, with its luminous paintings and gleaming antiques. I mean, in a good way. You must be rolling in it. I must be. People say you just touch something and the credits fly out. Do they? Yeah. And you didn't make all of it exactly on the upside, you know. But being hooked up with a cop like Dallas, you'd have to be straight. One would think, Rourke murmured, and swung through a door into a huge kitchen. Wow! Ultimate! You got people who, like, cook things by hand and stuff? It's been known to happen. Rourke watched the boy prowl, toy with controls on the CompuRange, the Sub-Zero refrigerator. It's not going to happen this morning. He walked to a large auto chef. What is it then, pizza or burger? Jamie grinned. Both? I could probably drink a gallon of Pepsi. We'll start with a tube. Rourke programmed the autochef, then went to the refrigerator himself. "Sit down, Jamie." Frigid. But he kept his eye on Rourke as he slid onto the padded bench of a breakfast nook. After a short debate, Rourke punched in for 2 tubes, slipped them out of the door slot when they slid down. "You'll want to contact your mother," he said. "You can use the link there." "No." Jamie put his hands under the table, rubbed them on his jeans. "She's zoned. She can't handle it. Alice. She's tranked out. The viewing's tonight." "I see." And because he did, Rourke let it drop. He handed the drink to Jamie, then took a large bubbling pizza from the autochef. He set it, then the burger that followed, on the table. "Rockin' A!" With the appetite of the young, Jamie grabbed the burger and bit in. Ma'am, it's meat," he said with his mouth full. "It's meat." It took a master not to let his mouth twitch. "You'd prefer soy?" Rourke asked politely. "Veggie?" "No way!" Jamie wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, grinned. "Really decent. Thanks." Rourke got 2 plates and a slicer. He went to work on the pizza. "I suppose breaking and entering stimulates the appetite. I'm always hungry." Without shame, Jamie transferred the first slice to his plate. "Mom says it's growing pains, but I just like to eat. She's real worried about junk intake, so I've got to sneak real food in. You know how moms are." "No, actually, I don't. I'll take your word." And because he'd never been quite as young as Jamie, or quite as innocent, he took a slice himself and prepared to enjoy watching the boy devour the rest. "Parents are okay." Jamie shrugged, alternating between the pizza and the burger. "I don't see my father, not in a few years. He's got a life over in Europe, the Morningside community outside London." "Structured, programmed, residential," Rourke put in. "Very tidy." "Yeah, and very boring. Even the grass is programmed. He digs on it, though, him and his foxy new wife, his 3rd already." He jerked a shoulder, sucked on the Pepsi. "He isn't much on the father game. It bothered Alice a lot. Me, I can take it or leave it." No, Rourke thought. He didn't think so. Wounds were there. Odd what deep and permanent injury a parent could cause a child. "Your mother hasn't married again?" "Nah, she's not into it. She was bummed pretty bad when he took off. I was 6. I'm 16 now, and she still thinks I'm a kid. I had to nag for weeks to get her to let me go for my vehicle license. She's okay, really. She's just—" He trailed off, stared down at his plate as if he wondered how food had gotten there. "She doesn't deserve this. She does the best she can. She doesn't deserve this. She loved Grandpa. They were really tight, and now Alice. Alice was really weird, but she was your sister," Rourke said quietly. "You loved her." "It shouldn't have happened to her." He lifted his gaze slowly, met Rourke's with a kind of terrifying fury. "When I find them, the ones who hurt her, I'm going to kill them." "You want to be careful what you say, Jamie." Eve stepped in. Her eyes were shadowed, her face pale with fatigue. Though she'd been careful, there were a few smears of blood on her jeans. "And you want to put away any thoughts of revenge and leave investigation to the cops." "They killed my sister." "It hasn't been determined that your sister was a victim of homicide." Eve headed to the autochef, programmed coffee. "And you're in enough trouble," she added before he could speak, "without hassling me." "Be smart," Rourke said when Jamie opened his mouth again. "Be quiet." Peabody stood in the humming silence. She studied the boy, felt a little tug. She had a brother his age. With this in mind, she slapped on a smile. "Pizza for breakfast," she said with determined cheer. "Got more?" "Help yourself," Rourke invited, and patted the bench beside him in invitation. "Jamie, this is Officer Peabody." "My grandfather knew you." Jamie studied her with cautious, appraising eyes. "Did he?" Peabody picked up a slice. "I don't think I ever met him. I knew about him, though. Everybody at Central was sorry when he died." "He knew about you. He told me Dallas was molding you." Peabody's a cop, Eve broke in, not a lump of clay. Annoyed, she picked up the last slice of pizza, bit in. This is cold. It's great cold, Peabody winked at Jamie. Nothing better than cold pizza for breakfast. Eat while you can. Respecting her own advice, Eve took another bite. It's going to be a long day. She pinned Jamie with a glance. Starting now. Until you have a guardian or representative present, I can't record your statement or officially question you. Do you understand? I'm not an idiot, and I'm not a child. You can be quiet, Eve interrupted. With or without representation, I can toss you into juvenile lockup for trespassing. If Rourke chooses to press charges... Eve, really, you be quiet too. She rounded on him, all frustration and fatigue. This isn't a game. It's murder. And the media is already outside, sniffing blood. You're not going to be able to step outside your own house without having them jump you. Do you think that disturbs me? It disturbs me. It damn well disturbs the hell out of me. My job doesn't come here. It doesn't come here. She stopped herself, turned away. This, she realized abruptly, was what ate at her insides, chewed at her control. There was blood on her home, and she had brought it there. Steadier, she turned back. That's all beside the point for now. You have some explaining to do, she said to Jamie. Do you want to do it here or down at Central after I contact your mother? He didn't speak for a moment, just watched her as if measuring. It was, she realized, the same look that had been in his eyes when she had told him his sister was dead. It was very adult, very controlled. I know who the dead guy is. His name is Lobar, and he's one of the bastards who killed my sister. I saw him. Chapter 9. Jamie's eyes were fierce, furious. Eve kept hers on his as she laid her palms on the table and leaned forward. Are you telling me that you saw Lobar kill your sister? Jamie's mouth worked as if he was chewing the words, and the words were bitter. No, but I know. I know he was one of them. I saw him with her. I saw all of them. His chin wobbled, and his voice cracked, reminding her he was only 16. But his eyes stayed ageless. I got in one night. In that apartment downtown. What apartment? Spooky Selena and asshole Alban. He shrugged a shoulder, but the movement was more nervous than cocky. I watched one of their devil shows. His hand wasn't quite steady as he picked up his drink and sucked down the last of the Pepsi. They let you observe a ceremony? They didn't let me do anything. They didn't know I was there. You could say I let myself in. He glanced at Rourke. Their security isn't nearly as jazzy as yours. There's good news. You've been a busy boy, Jamie, Eve said evenly. Planning on cat burglary as a career? No. He didn't smile. I'm going to be a cop, like you. Eve blew out a breath, scrubbed her hands over her face, and sat. Cops who make a habit of illegal entry end up on the wrong side of a cage. They had my sister. Were they holding her against her will? They messed with her mind. That's the same thing. Touchy area, Eve mused. She couldn't go back and stop the kid from breaking into private property. His grandfather had been a solid cop, she remembered, and had tried to do the same. The boy had simply succeeded. I'm going to do you a favor because I liked your grandfather. We're going to keep this off the record. As far as the record goes, you were never there, never inside that place. You got that? Sure. He jerked a shoulder. Whatever. Tell me what you saw. Don't exaggerate. Don't speculate. Jamie's lips curved a little. Grandpa always said that. That's right. You want to be a cop? Give me a report. Okay. Cool. Alice was in Weird City, right? She'd been cutting classes, making noises about dropping out. Mom was really wrecked over it. She thought it was a guy, but I knew it wasn't. Not that she was talking to me. She'd stopped talking to me. He broke off then, his eyes dark and miserable. Then he shook his head, sighed once, and continued. But I knew her. Alice would get all moony over a guy, dreamy-eyed and spastic. But with this, she was different. I figured she'd started experimenting. Illegals. I know my mom had talked to my grandfather, and he'd talked to Alice, but nobody was getting anywhere. So I figured I'd check it out. I followed her a couple times. I thought it would be good practice. Surveillance. She never tagged me. None of them did. A lot of people don't see kids, or if they do, they think they're harmless idiots. Eve kept her eyes hard on his face. I don't think you're harmless, Jamie. His lips twisted in a smirk. He recognized that Eve's statement wasn't exactly flattering. So I tailed her to that club, the Athame. First time I had to wait outside. I wasn't prepped for it. She went in about 10, came out about 12, with the ghoul patrol. He smirked again when Eve lifted a brow. Okay. Subject exited premises in the company of 3 individuals, 2 male, 1 female. You already got their descriptions, so I'll say they were later identified by investigator as Selina Cross, Alban, and Lobar. They proceeded east on foot, then entered multi-unit housing structure owned by Selina Cross. Investigator observed light go on in top window. After weighing the options, investigator decided to enter building. Security was bypassed with minimal to average effort. Can I have another Pepsi? Saying nothing, Rourke took the empty tube, slipped it into the recycling slot, and fetched the boy another. It was really quiet inside, Jamie continued as he broke the seal. Like dead. Dark. I had a mini light, but I didn't use it. I got upstairs, bypassed the palm plate and the cameras. The locks weren't that tricky. I figured they didn't think anybody'd have the nerve to come that far without an invite, you know. I got inside, and the place was empty. I couldn't figure it. I'd seen them go in, I'd seen the light, but the place was empty. So I poked around. They've got some screwy stuff in there, and it smelled off. Sort of like the incense and junk in a free-ager shop, but different, just off. I was in one of the bedrooms. There's this wild statue in there, this guy with a pig's head and a man's body with a really monster cock at full alert. He stopped, flushed a little as he remembered he was talking to females as well as cops. Sorry. I've seen cocks at full alert before, Eve said mildly. Go on. Okay. So I was just sort of looking at it, and this guy comes in. I thought, shit, I'm busted, but he didn't see me. He got something out of a drawer, turned around, and walked out, never even looked my way. Jamie shook his head, sipped deeply as he re-experienced the bowel-liquefying fear. I got to the doorway just as he was going through the wall. Secret panel, he explained with a quick grin. I thought they were only in old videos. I gave it a couple of minutes and went in after him. At this, Eve simply pressed her hands to her face, digging her fingers into the knots. You went in after him. Yeah, my luck was holding pretty good. There's a stairway, narrow. I think it was stone. I could hear music. Not really music, more like voices, sort of humming. And that off smell was stronger. The stairway turns, and there's this room, about half the size of this one, with mirrored walls, lots of candles and more horny statues. It's smoky. Something's in the smoke, 'cause it makes me lightheaded. I try to be careful not to breathe too much in. He stared down at the drink in his hand. This part was hard, he realized. Harder than he'd thought it would be. There's this raised platform, all this carving. Some sort of words, I think, but I can't make it out. Alice is lying on it. She's naked. The 3 of them are standing over her saying something. Singing it, I guess, but I can't understand them. They're doing things to her. To each other. He had to swallow again. His face was bone white with high red blotches on the cheeks. They've got, like, sex toys, and she's letting them. Both of them. And she lets them. She lets them do her while that cross bitch watches. Alice just lets them. Without realizing it, Eve reached out, took his hand, let him grip her fingers hard enough to rub bone. I couldn't stay there. I was sick seeing that, and the smoke, the sounds. I had to get out. His eyes were wet now as he looked up. She wouldn't have let them do that if they hadn't messed with her mind. She wasn't a slut. She wasn't. I know. Did you tell anyone? I couldn't. He swiped the back of one hand over his face. It would have killed my mom. I wanted to hit Alice with it, hit her hard with it. I was so pissed off. But I couldn't. I was embarrassed I'd seen her like that, I guess. My sister. It's all right. I went back to the club a couple nights later and got in. They let you inside? I got fake ID. Places like that, they don't care if you look 12 if you got ID that says different. Security's tighter there. They've got scanners, electronic and human, every damn where. I spotted Alice with that Lobar creep. They went upstairs, all the way up to the fancy level. I couldn't get in, but I got close enough to see they'd disappeared again, so I figured there must be a room up there, too, like the one in the apartment. I was working out a way to get in after hours when Alice ditched them. She moved in with that ISIS character for a while, got her own place and that job, and she didn't go to the club anymore, or back to the apartment. He let out a sigh. I thought she'd straightened herself out, that it had gotten through what creeps they were. She talked to me a little. Did she tell you about the people she'd been involved with? Not really. She just said she'd made a mistake, a terrible one, that she was like atoning, cleansing, that zip brain stuff of hers. I knew she was scared, but she talked to my grandfather, so I figured things would be mellow again. Did they kill him too? There's no evidence of that. I'm not going to discuss it with you, she added, when he lifted his haunted eyes to hers. And you're not to discuss this with anyone. You're not to go near that club or that apartment again. If you do and I find out, and I will find out, I'll slap a security bracelet on you and you won't be able to burp without a scanner picking it up. It's my family. Yes, it is. And if you want to be a cop, you'd better learn that if you can't be objective, you can't do the job. My grandfather wouldn't have been objective, Jamie said quietly. And now he's dead. She had no answer for that, so she rose. Now the problem is getting you out here and keeping your involvement out of the media. They'll be watching the gate. There's always an alternative, Rourke commented. I'll arrange it. She had no doubt he could, and nodded. I've got to change. Get down to Central. Peabody? She flicked a meaningful look in Jamie's direction. Stand by. Yes, sir. She means guard dog me, Jamie muttered as Eve and Rourke left the kitchen. Yeah, but Peabody flashed a companionable smile. Want another Pepsi? I guess. She got up to play with the delivery slot on the fridge, helped herself to a cup of Rourke's magnificent coffee. So, how long have you wanted to be a cop? For as long as I can remember. Me too. She settled down to talk shop. I'll take him out by air, Rourke told her as he and Eve cleaned up and changed in the bedroom. By air? I've been meaning to take the mini chopper out for a spin anyway. This area isn't zoned for personal choppers. Wisely, he disguised a laugh with a cough. Say that again when you're wearing your badge. She muttered to herself and pulled on a clean shirt. Take him home, will you? I appreciate it. The kid's lucky to be alive. He's resourceful, bright, focused. Rourke smiled as he picked up the jammer, admired it. Now, if I'd had one of these at his age, the possibilities. You do well enough with your magic fingers. True. He tucked the jammer in his pocket. He was going to have one of his engineers analyze and very possibly reproduce it. I'm afraid youth today doesn't appreciate the satisfaction of hands-on. If young Jamie changes his mind about law enforcement, I think I could find a nice slot for him in my little world. Don't even mention it. You'll corrupt him. Rourke picked up his slim gold wrist unit, fastened it on. You did very well with him. Firm without being cold. A nice authoritative yet maternal style. She blinked. Huh? You're good with children. He grinned as she paled. I'd wondered. Get a grip, a good strong grip, she advised, and strapped on her weapon harness. I'm going to hit Central first, file my report, feed Whitney the data that's not going into it. Officially, Jamie's name isn't going to be linked with this. I'm sure, if necessary, the two of you can work out a plausible story for his mother. Child's play, Rourke said with tongue-in-cheek. For my prelim, Lobar was killed at 03:30. That would be about an hour after we left the club. Hard to tell how long he'd been propped outside the gate, but at a guess, no more than 15 minutes or so before Jamie happened on him. It's not likely that whoever left Lobar hanging, let's say, stuck around. But if they did and spotted Jamie, he could be a target. I want the kid under surveillance, and until Whitney uncuffs me, I can't use a cop. Would you like me to put one of my trusted employees on him? No, but that's what I'm going to ask you to do. She turned to the mirror, raked fingers through her hair in lieu of a comb. I'm bringing this home. Too many angles of it. I'm sorry. He walked to her, turned her around, caught her face in his hands. You can't separate what you do from who you are. I don't expect or want you to. What touches you touches me. That's what I expect and what I want. The last case that touched me almost killed you. She wrapped her hands around his wrist, squeezed. I need you too much. It's your own fault. Exactly. He bent down, kissed her. That's what I want as well. Go to work, Lieutenant. I'm going. She strode to the door, paused, glanced back. I don't want to hear from traffic that my husband was hot-dogging the skyways in his mini-chopper. You won't. I bribed too well. It made her laugh as she headed back down to fetch Peabody and faced the first media onslaught. She'd no more than strapped into her vehicle when she heard the throaty purr of an expensive engine. Wincing only a little, she glanced east and saw the sleek little copter with its tinted one-way glass cabin and whirling silver blades rise, circle playfully and illegally before bulleting off. Wow, what a machine! Is that Rourke's? Have you been up? Peabody craned her head to try to get a last look. That is one rapid mother! Shut up, Peabody. I've never been up in a personal. With a wistful sigh, Peabody settled. Makes its traffic use look like dog meat. You used to be intimidated when I told you to shut up. Those were the good old days. Grinning, Peabody crossed her ankles. You handled the kid really well, Lieutenant. Eve rolled her eyes. I know how to interview a cooperative witness, Peabody. Not everybody can handle a teenager. They're brutal and fragile. That kid's seen more than anyone should. I know. So had she by that age, Eve remembered. Perhaps that's why she'd understood. Prepare yourself, Peabody. The sharks are circling. Peabody grimaced at the pack of reporters crowded outside the gate. There were minicams, recorders, and hungry looks. Gee, I hope they get my best side. Tough when you're sitting on it. Thanks. I've been working out. Automatically, Peabody wiped off the grin and assumed a blank professional expression. I don't see Nadine, she murmured. She's around. Eve hit the remote for the gates. First wouldn't miss this one. She timed it, opening the gate seconds before the nose of the car would have brushed iron. Reporters streamed forward, engulfing the car, aiming their cameras, shouting their questions. One or two were ballsy or stupid enough to step onto private property. Eve took note, switched the volume on her outside speakers to blast. The investigation is ongoing, she announced. There will be an official statement at noon. Any media representative who trespasses on this property will not only be prosecuted but will be blocked from all data. She all but slammed the gates on scrambling feet. Where the hell are the uniforms I left on duty? Probably eaten alive by now. Peabody stared through the reporter, who plastered himself against her side of the windshield. This one's kind of cute, Lieutenant. Try not to damage his face. His choice. She kept driving. Someone bounced off her fender and cursed. There was a slight bump and a very loud scream. That's 10 points for the foot, Peabody commented, secretly thrilled. See if you can swipe that one there. The woman with the yard of legs in the green suit. That'll get you 5 more. The reporter clinging to the windshield slid off as Eve juggled the wheel. Missed her. Well, can't win them all. Peabody? Eve shook her head, hit the accelerator, and headed downtown. Sometimes I worry about you. She wanted to see Whitney first, but wasn't surprised to find Nadine waiting in ambush at the first-level interior glide at Central. Busy night, Dallas. That's right, and I'm still busy. There'll be a press release by noon. You can give me something now. Nadine elbowed her way onto the glide. She wasn't a big woman, but she was a sneaky one. You didn't get to be one of the top on-air reporters in the city without some quick moves. "Just a nibble, Dallas. Something I can take to the public for my 10 o'clock bumper." "Dead guy," Eve said shortly. "Identification withheld until next of kin are notified." "So you know who he was? Got any leads on who opened his throat?" "My professional opinion would be someone with a sharp implement," Eve said dryly. "Mm-hmm." Nadine's eyes narrowed. "There's a rumor rolling around that there was a message left at the scene, and that it was a ritual killing." "Goddamn leaks," Eve thought. "I can't comment on that." "Wait a minute!" At the top of the glide, Nadine took Eve's arm. "You want me to hold something? You know I'll hold it. Give me something and let me work." Trusting the media was a dicey business, but she'd trusted Nadine before, to their mutual benefit. As a research tool, Eve knew Nadine was a finely honed instrument. If it was a ritual killing, which is not substantiated and not for broadcast, my next step would be to gather all pertinent data on established cults and their members, registered and otherwise, in the city. "There are all kinds of cults, Dallas." "Then you'd better get busy." She shook her arm free before dropping one more crumb. "Funny, cult must be the root word for occult. Or maybe it's just a coincidence." "Maybe it is." Nadine swung to the downward glide. "I'll let you know." That was tidy, Peabody decided. Let's hope it stays that way. I'm for Whitney. I want you to find out the names of every uniform that was on scene this morning. I want to have a talk about internal security with every one of them. Ouch. Damn right, Eve muttered, and stalked to the elevator. Whitney didn't make her wait. She knew as she took her seat in his office that he didn't appear to have slept any more than she the night before. "Internal Affairs is beefing on the Wojcinski matter. They're pushing for an official investigation." "You can't hold them off." "Not past end of shift today." "My report should help." She took a disc out of her bag. "There is absolutely no evidence that D.S. Wojcinski was using illegals. There's every indication that he was running his own sting on Selina Cross. His reasons were personal, Commander, but even IAD should understand them. I have Alice's statement, recorded, and fully transcribed in the report. In my opinion, she had been drugged and her naivete exploited. She was used sexually. She became involved with the cult established by Selina Cross and Alban, and when she broke with them, she was threatened, and she was frightened. Eventually, she went to Frank." "Why did she break loose?" "She claims she witnessed the ritual slaying of a child." "What?" His knuckles went white as he surged up from his desk. "She witnessed a murder, reported this to Frank, and he didn't file?" "She waited some time before telling him, Commander. There was no evidence to support her allegations. I can't substantiate them now, but I can say that Alice believed she saw the killing, and she was terrified for her life. She also felt she was responsible for the death of her grandfather. She believed, strongly, that he had been murdered because of his private investigation of Selina Cross. Her claim was that Selina Cross has expert knowledge of chemicals and essentially poisoned Frank." "We don't have enough to prove foul play." "Not yet. Alice was certain she would be next, and she died the same night she gave her statement to me. She also claimed Cross was a shapeshifter." "Excuse me?" "She believed that Cross could take other forms. A raven, for one." "She thought Cross could become a crow and fly? Jesus, Dallas, the boys in IAD are gonna love that one." "It doesn't have to be real for her to have believed it. She was a terrified young girl, tormented by these people. I found a black feather on her windowsill the night she died, a simulated feather, and there was a threatening message on her link. They were tormenting her, Commander. There's no mistake there. What Frank did, he did to try to protect his family. Maybe he went about it wrong, but he was a good cop. He died a good cop. IAD isn't going to change that." "We'll make sure they don't." He locked the disc away. "For now, this stays here." "Feeney, not at this time, Lieutenant." Damn if she'd be brushed off like a fly, she thought, and set her jaw. "Commander, My investigation to this point discloses absolutely no connection between D.S. Wojcinski's private investigation and Captain Feeney. I can find no evidence that Feeney tampered with any records for Frank. Do you actually believe Feeney would leave evidence, Dallas? She kept her eyes level. I'd know if he was involved. He's grieving for both his friend and his goddaughter, and he doesn't know anything other than the official line on either. He doesn't know, Commander, and he has a right to. It was going to cost them, Whitney knew, all of them, but it couldn't be helped. I can't take his personal rights into consideration, Lieutenant. Believe me, IAD won't. All data here is on need-to-know only. It's a rough spot. You'll have to handle it. It ate a hole in her gut, but she nodded. I'll handle it. What connection is this to the body left outside your home this morning? Left with no choice, she fell back on training and delivered data. Robert Matthias, known as Lobar, white male, 18 years. My report on cause of death is the throat wound, but the body was also mutilated. The victim was a member of Cross's cult. I also interviewed him last night at his place of employment, a club called the Athame, owned by Selina Cross. People you talk to are ending up dead very quickly, Dallas. He was Cross's alibi for the night Alice was killed. Hers and Alban's. He corroborated this during questioning. She opened her bag. He wasn't killed at the scene, and he was left there in a manner designed to indicate a ritual killing. She placed one of the death stills on Whitney's desk. The murder weapon was likely the knife he's got stuck in his groin. It's an athame, a ritual knife. Supposedly, Wiccans dull the blade and use it only for symbolism. She took out another shot, a close-up of the note. The message appears to indicate the murder was done by an enemy of the Church of Satan. Church of Satan, Whitney muttered. The death photo didn't sicken him. It tired him. He'd seen far too many. The ultimate oxymoron. Someone took a dislike to the practices and took him out. The scene was set that way. It's possible, and I've got a couple of lines I can tug on that angle. He looked up from the photo. You're thinking Cross had a hand in this? She'd execute her own alibi? She'd execute her own progeny if she had any. I think she's smart, Eve continued, and I think she's crazy. I'll be consulting with Mira on that end, but I also think she'd get a real bang out of doing this, out of rubbing it in my face. She didn't need him anymore. I had his statement. Whitney nodded, pushed the photos back to her. Talk to her again, and this Alban. Yes, sir. She put the photos away. There's more. It's delicate. What? I've deleted any reference to this from the official report, slightly altered the timing. For the record, Rourke and I were awakened by the security alarm, which was tripped when the body was placed against the perimeter wall. Off the record, we didn't discover the body initially. Jamie Lingstrom did. Jesus, Whitney said after a long minute. He pressed his fingers over his eyes. How? Eve cleared her throat and gave a quick and concise report of everything that took place after the alarm. She concluded with what Jamie had told her at the breakfast table. I don't know how much of that you want to feed to IAD. Jamie's statement corroborates Alice's contention that Frank was trying to trap Cross. I'll filter out what I can. He continued to rub his eyes. First his granddaughter, now his grandson. I think I shook him enough to keep him in line. Dallas, teenagers are remarkably hard to shake. I've been there. I do want him to have some protection, as well as surveillance. Using my own judgment, I'm arranging for this privately. Whitney lifted a brow. You mean Rourke's arranging it? Eve folded her hands. The boy will be watched. We'll leave it at that. He leaned back. A homemade handheld jammer, you said? One the kid jerry-rigged, that managed to bypass the outer layers of the security on that fortress you live in? So it would seem. Where is it? You didn't give it back to him. I'm not an idiot, she said, as if she'd been slapped on the wrist. Rourke has it. And as she completed the sentence, and the thought, her training slipped enough for her to wince. Rourke has it. Despite the situation, Whitney threw back his head and laughed. "Oh, that's rich. You gave the wolf the key to the hen house." He caught her narrow-eyed scowl and muffled the next chuckle. "Just trying for a little levity, Lieutenant." "Yes, sir." "Ha ha. I'll get it back." "No offense, Dallas, but if you're taking bets, I've got 100 I'll put on Rourke. In any case, unofficially, the department appreciates his assistance and cooperation." "You'll excuse me if I don't relay that. It'll only go to his head." Recognizing dismissal, she rose. "Commander, Frank was clean. IAD is going to confirm that. Whether his death was of natural causes or induced is going to be more difficult to establish. I could use Captain Feeney." "You know you don't need Feeney on this, Dallas. Not in an investigative sense. I appreciate your feelings, but this stays here until further notice." "You might find yourself sitting in this chair one day," he said, and watched her brow furrow in surprise. "Difficult decisions sit here with you, and giving unpleasant orders is every bit as frustrating as taking them. Keep me posted." "Yes, sir." She walked out, knowing that she didn't want his chair, his rank, or his responsibilities. Chapter 10. Her first duty was to inform Lobar's next of kin. Once it was done, Eve spent a few moments pondering family. They hadn't cared. The woman's face on screen had stayed blank, as if Eve had informed her of the death of a stranger rather than a son she had birthed and raised. She had thanked Eve politely, asked no questions, agreed that the remains be sent home when released. They would, she'd said, give him a decent Christian burial. She imagined they would have done the same for a family pet. What calcified the feelings to that extent, she wondered. If there had been feelings to begin with, what made one mother grieve so pitifully, as his mother was, and another take the news of her child's death without a single tear? What had her own mother felt on her birth? Had she been happy, or simply relieved to have the 9-month intruder finally evicted from her body? She had no memory of a mother, not even some shadowy female form in her life. Only her father, of the man who had dragged her from place to place, kept her in locked rooms, who had raped her, and the memories of him, after so many years of denial, were much too clear. Perhaps some people were fated to survive without family, she thought, or simply to survive them. Because her thoughts were dark, it was with mixed feelings she called Dr. Mira's office for a consultation. After she'd managed to intimidate Mira's assistant into squeezing her in the next day, she grabbed her bag, beeped Peabody, and headed out. She didn't miss Peabody's wary expression as they pulled up in front of Selina's apartment, but she ignored it. It was starting to rain, a nasty, surprisingly cold drip out of suddenly leaden skies. The wind was up, whistling down the long canyon of street and biting where it struck exposed flesh. On the opposite sidewalk, a man rushed east, huddled under a black umbrella. He turned quickly into a shop with a grinning skull and the words, "The Arcane," painted on the door. "Perfect day to pay a visit to Satan's handmaid." Peabody strained for false cheer, and surreptitiously fingered a bit of St. John's wort she'd stuck in her pocket, her mother's advice for protection against black magic. The stalwart Peabody had discovered she believed in witches after all. They went through the same routine with security, only the wait was longer and more unpleasant as the rain began to stream down in earnest. Nasty forks of lightning jabbed at the sky, their tines bright blood-red at the edges. Eve glanced up, then back at her aide. Her smile was hard and cold. Yeah, perfect. They trailed water into the lobby, into the elevator, and into the foyer of Selina Cross's apartment. And it was Alban who greeted them. Lieutenant Dallas. He offered a beautifully sculptured hand, graced with a single ring of thick brushed silver. "I'm Alban, Selina's companion. I'm afraid she's meditating at the moment. I hesitate to disturb her." "Let her meditate. You'll do for now." "Well then, come in and sit down. Please." His manner was sophisticated, faintly formal, and at odds with the bare-chested black leather unisuit he wore. Can I get you something? Some tea, perhaps, to ward off the chill. Such an interesting change in the weather. Nothing. Eve thought she'd have preferred a quick hit of Zeus to anything brewed in that place. The gloom suited it, she decided. The dank light, the wicked hiss of rain and wind on the windows. Then there was Alban, with his pretty poet's face and warrior god body, a perfect fallen angel. I'd like your whereabouts for last night between the hours of 300 and 500 hours. 3 and 5 a.m. He blinked, as if translating the military time. Last night, or this morning, rather? Why, here. I think we got back from the club a bit before 2. We haven't been out yet today. We? Selina and myself. We had a coven meeting, which concluded around 3. We cut it a little short, as Selina wasn't feeling herself. Normally, we might entertain afterwards, or continue with a smaller, more private rite. But you didn't do so last night. No, as I said, Selina wasn't feeling well, so we went to bed early. Early for us, he explained with a smile. We're night people. Who attended the coven meeting? His smile shifted into a serious, almost studious expression. Lieutenant, religion is a private matter, and still in this day and age, one such as ours is persecuted. Our membership prefers discretion. One of your membership was indiscreetly murdered last night. No. He rose slowly, keeping his hand braced on the arm of his chair as if unsteady. I knew it was something horrible. She was so disturbed. He took a deep breath, as if preparing both mind and body. Who? Lobar. Selina said the name as she stepped through a narrow archway. She was deathly pale, her cat's eyes shadowed. She wore her black hair loose today, with a wide dip over jen breasts. It was Lobar, she repeated. I saw it just now in the smoke. Alban. She pressed a hand to her head, swayed. Quite a show, Eve murmured, as Alban rushed across the room to catch her, to hold her against him. You saw it in the smoke. Eve cocked her head. That's handy. Maybe I should take a look at the smoke myself, see who cut his throat. There's nothing in the smoke for you but your own ignorance. Leaning on Alban, Selina walked slowly to the sofa. She sat with a rustle of her robes, lifted a hand to Alban's. I'm all right. My love. He brought her hand to his lips. I'll get you a soother. Yes, thank you. She bowed her head while he went quietly out. Oh, it was hard to keep a cat grin off her face, to stop the glorious images from playing back in her brain of the rite, the sacrifice, the blood. And only she and Alban knew of the excitement, the power of that moment when Lobar had been offered to the master. Only she fully understood the thrill of making that sacrifice with her own hand. She shuddered once with dark pleasure, stirred by the memory. The way Lobar's eyes had met hers, the way the athame had fit cold in her hand, then the hot fountain of blood when she'd used it. Imagining the shock, the fury Eve must have felt when she'd found Lobar so carefully positioned at the entrance to her own sanctuary, Selina nearly snickered. She pressed her fingers to her lips a moment, as if holding back a sob. Alban was a genius, she thought, for truly only a genius would have created such beautiful irony. Visions can be a blessing or a curse, she continued in a voice strained with weariness. I prefer to think of them as blessings, even when they cause me sorrow. Lobar is a heavy loss. Laying it thick, aren't you? Selina's head shot up, and her eyes glimmered with something more of hate than grief. Don't mock my feelings, Dallas. Do you think power such as mine means I don't have them? I feel, I experience, I bleed, she added, and with a lightning movement, raked one of her long, lethal nails over her own palm. Blood welled dark and red. A demonstration wasn't necessary, Eve said easily. I know you bleed. Lobar certainly did. His throat. Yes, that's what I saw in the smoke. She reached out for Alban when he came in, carrying a shallow silver bowl. But there was more, something else. She took the bowl, tipped it up to her lips. Mutilation. Oh, how they despise us! They? The weak and the white. She took a black swatch of cloth from the pocket of her robe, passed it to Alban. He lifted her injured hand, raised it to his lips. With quick efficiency, he bound up her wounded palm. Selina never spared him a glance. Those who view our master with hate, she continued, and more, those who practice the magic of the foolish. So, in your opinion, this was a religious murder? Of course, I have no doubt. She finished the soother, set the bowl aside. Do you? Quite a number of them. But then I have to investigate the old-fashioned way. I can't call up the devil and ask for a consult. Lobar was here last night. Yes, until nearly 3. He would have taken the mark soon. Selina sighed, idly running her red-tipped nails up and down Alban's arm. One of his last acts was to join his body with mine. You had sex with him last night? Yes. Sex is an important part of our rituals. I chose him last night. She shuddered again, because the choice had been hers, and the deed. Something must have told me. A bird, maybe. A big black bird. Lifting a brow, Eve studied Alban. So it's no problem with you to watch while other men have sex with your companion? Most men are a little territorial. They might harbor unhealthy resentments. We don't believe in monogamy. We find it limiting and foolish. Sex is pleasure, and we don't put restrictions on our pleasures. Consensual sex in a private home or licensed club isn't against your laws, Lieutenant. He smiled. I'm sure you engage in it yourself. You like to watch, Alban? His brows lifted. Is that an invitation? At Selina's quick chuckle, he shifted and took her hand. There, you're feeling better now. Grief passes, doesn't it, Selina? It must, she agreed, nodding at Eve. Life is to be lived. You'll look for who did this, and perhaps you'll find them, but the punishment of our master is greater and more terrible than any you could invent. Your master isn't my concern. Murder is. Since you have an interest in the deceased, maybe you'll let me take a look around. Get a warrant, and you're welcome. The trank had clouded her eyes, but her voice was strong enough when she stood. You're more of a fool than I originally thought if you believe I had anything to do with this. He was one of ours. He was loyal. It is against the law to harm a loyal member of the cult. And he talked to me last night in a privacy booth. Did the smoke tell you what he told me, Selina? Her eyes shifted, darkened. You'll have to find other waters to fish in, Dallas. I'm tired, Alban. Show them out. She glided away, back through the arch. There's nothing we can do for you, Lieutenant. Selina needs rest. He glanced toward the arch, worry in his eyes. I need to tend her. Got you trained, does she? With light disdain coating her voice, Eve rose. Do you do tricks, too? Sadly, he shook his head. My devotion to Selina is personal. She has powers, and the powerful have needs. I meet hers gratefully. He walked back into the foyer, opened the door. We would like to take Lobar's body, when it's possible. We have our death ceremony. So does his family, and they come ahead of you. So what do we have on this Alban? Eve demanded the moment they were outside in the now drenching rain. Next to nothing. Peabody ducked into the car and immediately felt more at ease. She knew it was foolish to hope she never had to go back inside that building, but she hoped in any case. No priors, next to no background. If he was born with a name other than Alban, it doesn't pop. There's more. There's always more. Not so, Eve thought, drumming her fingers against the wheel. She'd once investigated another suspicious character and had found little to nothing. His only name was Rourke. Look again, she ordered, and pulled away from the curb. Funny, isn't it? she continued while Peabody plugged in her data unit. "There's next to no traffic on this block. Turn the corner." She did so, and immediately hit a snarl of nasty and comforting vehicular traffic, bumping bad-temperedly through the rain. People hustled along sidewalks and glides, huddled in doorways. Two glide cart operators on opposing corners hunched under ratty awnings and scowled at each other. People have instincts they're not even aware of. Still less than comfortable, Peabody glanced back, as if expecting something not quite human might be scrabbling behind them. "There's a bad feeling around that building. It's brick and glass." "Yeah, but places tend to take on the personalities of the people who live in them." A car turned the corner ahead, blasting its horn at the sea of pedestrians who streamed across against the go-light. Insults were cheerfully hurled, both verbally and through equally graphic hand signals. Someone spat. Steam poured up through the vents from the underground system in dirty clouds. It tangled thickly with the smoke belching from a ratty and obviously undercode glide-a-grill fighting its way through the mass of wet humanity. A level up, the nearest skywalk shuddered to a halt and sent all its passengers into a riot of cursing and complaints. Overhead, a tourist blimp blasted out a spiel of the advantages and highlights of living in an urban wonderland. Peabody took a cleansing breath, pleased to be back in the midst of the arrogant and crowded New York she understood. "Take Rourke's place," she continued. "It's grand and elegant and intimidating, but it's also sexy and mysterious." She was too busy fiddling with the unit to notice the amused look Eve shot her. "My parents' place, it's all open and warm and a little confused." "What about your place, Peabody? What's that?" "Temporary," Peabody said definitely. "Dallas, your car unit isn't cooperating here. I should be able to transfer data to—" She broke off as Eve leaned over, the dash above the car screen. An image popped on, wobbling drunkenly. "That's some better," Peabody decided, and requested a run on Alban. Alban. No known alternate name. Born 3/22/2020. Omaha, Nebraska. "Funny," Eve interrupted. "He didn't look corn-fed." ID number 31666-LRT-99. Parents unknown. Marital status single. No known means of support. No financial data available. Interesting. Sounds like he's leeching off Selena. Criminal records, all arrests. No criminal record. Education? Unknown. Our boy's wiped, or had somebody wipe records, Eve told Peabody. You don't get to be nearly 40 years old without generating more data than this. He's got connections somewhere. She needed Feeney, she thought grumpily. Feeney could tickle the computer and trick additional data. Instead, she was going to have to go to Rourke and add another layer to his involvement. Well, shit. She pulled up in front of Spirit Quest, frowned at the close sign on the door. Run up for a look-see, Peabody. Maybe she's inside. Got an umbrella or a rain shield? Eve arched a brow. Are you trying to be funny? Peabody only sighed, then pushed out of the car. She plodded and splashed through the rain, peered into windows. Shivering a little, she turned back, shook her soaking head, then groaned when Eve jerked a thumb toward the apartment over the shop. Resigned, Peabody trudged around the side, climbed a set of rickety metal stairs. Moments later, she was back, streaming water. No answer, she told Eve. Minimal security, unless you count the swatch of St. John's wort over the entrance. She has a swatch of warts? That's disgusting. Not warts. Despite her wet uniform and dripping hair, Peabody indulged in a good laugh. It's a plant. St. John's wort. Amused enough, she dug into her pocket for her sprig. Like this. It's for protection. Guards against evil. You carry plants in your pocket, officer? I do now. Peabody pushed it back in her pocket. Want some? No, thanks. I prefer trusting my weapon to guard against evil. I consider this my clutch piece. Whatever works for you. Eve scanned the area. Let's try that cafe place across the street. Maybe they know why she's closed in the middle of a business morning. Maybe they've got decent coffee, Peabody said, and sneezed twice, hard. If I catch a cold, I'll kill myself. It takes me weeks to throw one of those suckers off. Maybe you need a plant to cart around that wards off common germs. Leaving it at that, Eve hopped out of the car, coated the locks, and jogged across the street into Coffee Olay. The stab at a Mexican theme wasn't bad, she decided. Bright colors, heavy on orange, gave it a sunny appearance even on a filthy day. It might have fallen far short of Rourke's gorgeous villa on the west coast of Mexico, but it had a certain tacky charm with its plastic flowers and papier-mâché bowls. Bright mariachi music piped through the speakers. Either the rain or the ambiance had brought in a crowd. But as Eve scanned the room, she noticed that the people packed around the tables weren't wolfing down plates of enchiladas. Most were huddled over single, stingy cups of what smelled remotely like overboiled soy coffee. "Baseball's closing in on the league titles, isn't it, Peabody?" Peabody sneezed again. "Baseball? I guess. Arena ball's my game." "Uh-huh. Seems to me there's a pennant race going on. Pivotal game today. I imagine lots of money's going to change hands." Peabody's head was starting to feel stuffy, a very bad sign, but it was still clear enough for her to latch on. "You figure this is a front, an illegal betting parlor." "Just a hunch. We may be able to use it." She sidled up to the counter, tagged a harassed-looking man, short of stature, dark of complexion, weary of eye. "Eat in or carry out?" "Neither," she began, then relented as she heard Peabody sniffle. "One coffee, for her. And a couple of answers." "I've got coffee." He swiveled around to plug thick, dark brew into a cup barely bigger than a thimble. "I've got no answers." Maybe you should hear the questions. "Lady, I got a full house here. I serve coffee. I got no time for conversation." He dumped the cup on the counter and would have backed away, but Eve snagged his wrist. "What are the house odds on the game today?" His eyes shifted left and right before settling on her face. But he'd spotted Peabody and her uniform. "Don't know what you're talking about." "You know, if me and my pal here settle in for a few hours, your business is going into the recycler. Personally, I don't give a good damn about your business. Any of your business. But I could." Still holding his wrist, she turned her head and stared hard at two of the men seated at the counter. It took less than 10 seconds for them to decide to drink coffee elsewhere. "How long do you think it'd take me to clear this place out?" "What do you want? I make my contribution. I'm covered." She let him go. It annoyed her to find out that he had cop protection. Didn't surprise her, just annoyed. "I'm not going to interfere unless you irritate me. Tell me about the shop across the street, Spirit Quest." He snorted, visibly relaxed. She wasn't after him. Feeling cooperative, he refilled Peabody's cup, then picked up a rag and wiped the counter. He ran a clean place. "The witch? She don't come in here, don't drink coffee, if you know what I mean." "She's closed today." "Yeah?" He narrowed his eyes to try to see through the window, through the rain. "Not usually." "When did you see her last?" "Shit." He scratched the back of his neck. "Let's see, seems I saw her yesterday. Closing time? Yeah, she closes about 6, and I was washing the front windows. You gotta keep on the windows in this city. Dirt just jumps right on them." "I bet." "She closed about 6. Then what?" "Went off with that guy she lives with. Walking. They don't got transpo." "You haven't seen her today?" "Now that you mention it, guess not. She lives up above, you know. Me, I live across town. Keep business and personal life separate. That's my motto." "Any of her people ever come over here?" "Nah." "Well, some of her customers, sure. And some of mine go over there looking for Lucky Charms. We bump along okay. She ain't no problem for me. Even bought the wife a birthday present over there. Pretty little bracelet, colored stones. Kind of stiff in the price, but women like that glitter shit." He tossed the rag aside and ignored the request for coffee from down the counter. "Look, she in trouble? She's okay in my book. Weird, maybe, but ain't no harm in her." "What do you know about the girl who used to work there? Young girl, about 18, blonde." "The spooky one?" Sure, I used to see her come and go. Always looking over her shoulder, that one, like somebody was going to jump out and say boo. Someone did, Eve thought. Thanks. If you see Isis come back today, give me a call. She slipped a card onto the counter, along with credits for the coffee. No problem. Wouldn't like to see her get in trouble, though. She's okay for a wacko. Hey! He lifted a finger as Eve started to turn. Speaking of wackos, I saw one a couple of nights ago when I was closing up. What sort of wacko? Just a guy. Well, might have been a woman. Couldn't tell, 'cause they was all wrapped up in this black robe, hood and everything. Just standing there on the curb, staring across the street at her place. Just standing and staring. Gave me the creeps. I walked the other way, twice as far to the bus stop, but I didn't like the feel of it. And you know what? I looked back, and there wasn't no one there. Nothing but a damn cat. Wacko, huh? Yeah, Eve murmured. Wacko. I saw a cat, Peabody began when they headed back to the car, on the street when Alice was killed. There are lots of cats in the city. But Eve remembered the one on the ramp, sleek and black and mean. We'll follow up with Isis later. I want to check with the ME before I feed the statement to the media. She uncoated the car as Peabody sneezed again. Maybe he'll have something for that cold. Peabody rubbed her hand under her nose. I'd just as soon stop by a pharmacy if you don't mind. I don't want Dr. Death treating me until absolutely necessary. After she was back in her office, and Peabody was off changing into a dry uniform and dosing herself with a small fortune of over-the-counters, Eve studied the autopsy report on Lobar. She'd had the time of death right in the prelim, and the cause. Then again, she mused, it was tough to miss a mile-wide gash in the throat and a crater in the chest. And fancy that, there had been traces of a hallucinogen, a stimulant and a mind hazer, all of the illegals variety, in his bloodstream. So he'd died sexually fulfilled and zoned. Some, she imagined, would say that wasn't such a bad deal, but then most of them hadn't had a knife raked over their throats. She lifted the sealed weapon, studied it. No prints, of course, and none expected. No blood on it, but for the victims. She studied the carved black handle, scanning the symbols and letters that meant nothing to her. It appeared to be old and rare, but she doubted that would help her pin ownership. The blade was under legal limit, required no registration. Still, she would check antique shops, knife shops, and she supposed witch shops. That would only take weeks, she thought in disgust, and was unlikely to lead anywhere. Since she had 20 minutes before she had to face the media, she turned to her machine and got started. She'd no more than plugged in the description of the weapon when Feeney walked in, shut her door. Heard you had a rude awakening this morning. Yeah. Her stomach clutched, not in memory of what had come into her home, but at knowing she would have to weigh every word with him. Not the kind of package I like to receive. You need help on it? He smiled wanly. I'm looking for busy work. I've got it covered for now, but I'll let you know. He paced to her narrow window, back to her door. He looked exhausted, she thought. So tired, so sad. What's the story? Did you know the guy? Not really. Oh, Christ, she thought, what did she do here? I'd talked to him once about a case I was on. Didn't pan out. Could be he knew more than he was telling me. It's going to be hard to say now. She took a deep breath, hating herself. I figure it was someone who wanted to take a swipe at me or Rourke. Most cops can keep their home addresses quiet. I can't. She shrugged. Price you pay for falling for a public figure. You happy? He said abruptly, and turned to study her face. Sure. She wondered if guilt was plastered on her forehead like a neon sign. Good. Good. He paced again, jiggling the bag of nuts he habitually carried in his pocket and no longer seemed to have the appetite for. It's tough to be on the job and make a decent personal life. Frank did. I know. Alice's viewing is tonight. You gonna make it? I don't know, Feeney. I'll try. It rips me, Dallas. It really rips me. My wife's with Brenda now. She's wrecked. Just wrecked. I couldn't handle it anymore, so I came in. But I can't focus. Why don't you go back home, Feeney? She rose, reached out to touch his arm. Just go home. Maybe you and your wife could go away for a few days. You've got the time coming. Get away from this. Maybe. His eyes were bleak, heavy with bags. But where do you go to get away from what's always there? Listen, Rourke's got this place in Mexico. It's great. She was fumbling and knew it, desperate to give. It's got a monster view, and it's fully equipped. It would be. She managed a smile. It's Rourke's. I'll square it with him. You can go there. Take your family. Take the family. He repeated it slowly, finding the idea was almost soothing. Maybe I will. You never seem to make time to be with your family. I'll think about it, he decided. Thanks. It's nothing. It's Rourke. It's just there. She turned blindly toward her desk. I'm sorry, Feeney. I've got to get it together for a media statement. Sure. He worked up a smile for her. I know how much you love that. I'll let you know about using the place. Yeah, do that. She stared hard at her screen until he went out. She'd followed orders, she reminded herself. She'd done the right thing. So why did it make her feel like a traitor? Chapter 11. She made the tail end of the viewing, grateful that Rourke had come with her. It was too familiar. The same memorial parlor, the same scents, many of the same people. I hate this, she murmured. Sanitized death. It comforts. Eve looked over to where Brenda was supported by her mother and her son, while tears ran slowly down her cheeks. She had the glazed and delicate look of the heavily medicated. Does it? It closes, he corrected, and took her cold hand in his. For some. When it's my turn, don't do this. Recycle the parts, burn the rest. Get it done. He felt the fist clutch around his heart and gave her hand a hard squeeze. Don't. Sorry. I tend to have morbid thoughts in places like this. Well, her room scan stopped when she spotted Isis. There's my witch. Rourke followed her gaze and studied the imposing woman with flame-colored hair and wearing a simple robe of pure white. She stood by the viewing box beside a man a full head shorter than she. He wore a plain, almost conservative suit, also in white. Their fingers were linked. The man with her? I don't know him. Might be a member of her sect, or whatever. Let's check it out. They moved across the room, and by tacit agreement flanked the couple. Eve looked down at Alice first, at the young face, composed now. Death had a way of relaxing the features, after the insult had passed. She's not here, Isis spoke quietly. Her spirit still searches for peace. I'd hoped to find her here. I'm sorry I missed you today, Dallas. We were closed in Alice's memory. You weren't at home, either. No, we gathered at another place, for our own ceremony. The man across the street told me you'd been looking for me. A faint smile wisped around her mouth. He was concerned that I had a cop on my trail. He has a good heart, despite a certain imbalance. She stepped back to introduce the man beside her. This is Chaz, my mate. Training kept Eve's eyes bland, but she was surprised. He was as ordinary as Isis was spectacular. His hair was a washed-out blonde, thin in texture. His body was almost fragile, narrow in the shoulders, short in the leg. His square, unremarkable face was stopped just short of homely by a pair of surprisingly lovely deep gray eyes. When he smiled, it was with a sweetness that demanded a smile in return. I'm sorry to meet you under such sad circumstances. Isis told me you were a very strong and purposeful soul. I see she was right, as always. She nearly blinked at his voice. It was a deep, creamy baritone any opera singer would have wept for. She caught herself watching his mouth move and imagining a ventriloquist's dummy. It wasn't a voice that should have come out of that body and that face. I need to talk to you both as soon as possible. She glanced around. wished for a discreet way to slip out and conduct an interview. It would have to wait. "This is Rourke." "Yes, I know." Isis offered a hand. "We've met before." "Have we?" His smile was politely curious. "I can't imagine forgetting meeting a beautiful woman." "Another time, another place." Her eyes stayed on his. "Another life. You saved mine once." "That was wise of me." "Yes, it was, and kind. Perhaps some day you'll revisit the county of Cork and see a small stone dance alone in a fallow field, and you'll remember." She slipped the silver cross she wore off her neck, handed it to him. "You gave me a talisman then, similar to this Celtic cross. I suppose that's why I wore it tonight, to close a circle." The metal was warmer against his hand than it should have been, and it stirred something in cloudy memory he didn't care to explore. "Thank you." He slipped it into his pocket. "One day I may return the favor you did me." She turned to Eve then. "I'll speak with you whenever you like." "Chaz?" "Of course, whenever it's convenient for you, Lieutenant Dallas. Will you attend our ceremony? We'd very much like to share it with you. Night after next. We have a small place upstate. It's quiet and private, and, when the weather cooperates, perfect for outdoor rites. I hope you—" He broke off, his stunning eyes going dark, his thin body shifting to what Eve recognized immediately as a guard stance. "He's not one of us," he said. She glanced around, spotted a man in a dark suit. His face was cell-block white and framed by a black wedge of hair. The suit was expensive, his skin wan, making him appear both sickly and successful. He started toward the viewing box, saw the group already there. In one jerky move, he turned on his heel and hurried out. "I'll check it out." She was moving quickly when Rourke caught up with her. "We'll check it out. It would be better if you stayed inside with them. I'm staying with you." She only shot him a frustrated look. "Don't cramp my style." "Wouldn't dream of it." The retreating man was nearly at a run as he hit the door. Eve only had to touch his arm to have him jolt. What do you want?" He whirled, pressing the door for release, backing out of it into the rainy night. "I haven't done anything." "No? He sure looks guilty for an innocent man, doesn't he?" She took a firmer grip on his arm to keep him from rabbiting away. "Maybe you should show me some ID." "I don't have to show you anything." "It's not necessary," Rourke said smoothly. He'd gotten a better look now. "Thomas Weinberg, isn't it? Of Weinberg Financial. You've nabbed yourself a deadly type here, Lieutenant. A banker. 3rd generation. Or is it 4th? "It's 5th, Weinberg said, struggling to look down his narrow nose at what his family would consider new and not quite decent money. "And I've done nothing to warrant being accosted by a police officer and a financial rogue." "I'm the cop," Eve decided, glancing at Rourke. "You must be the financial rogue." "He's just mad because I don't use his bank." Rourke flashed a wolfish grin. "Aren't you, Tommy?" "I have nothing to say to you." "Well, then, you can talk to me. What's the rush?" I have an appointment I'd forgotten. I'm quite late." "Then a couple more minutes won't matter. Are you a friend of the deceased's family?" "No." "Oh, I get it. You just like to while away a rainy evening at a viewing parlor. I've heard that's the coming thing for singles." I mistook the address." "I don't think so. What did you come to see? Or who?" His eyes widened when Isis and Chaz stepped out. "Stay away from me!" "I'm sorry, Dallas. We were concerned when you didn't come back." Isis turned her exotic eyes on Weinberg. "Your aura is dark and muddy. You dabble without belief. Toy with power beyond your scope. If you don't change your path, you damn yourself." "Keep her away from me!" Straining against Eve's grip, Weinberg cringed back. "She's not hurting you." "What do you know about Alice's death, Weinberg?" "I don't know anything." His voice went shrill. "I don't know anything about anything. I mistook the address. I have an appointment. You can't hold me." No, she couldn't, but she could scare the hell out of him. I could take you down to Central, play with you a while before your representative managed to get there. Wouldn't that be fun? I haven't done anything. To Eve's surprise and mild disgust, he began to sob like a baby. You have to let me go. I'm not part of this. Part of what? It was just for sex, that's all. Just for sex. I didn't know anybody would die. Blood everywhere. Everywhere. Dear God, I didn't know. Where? What have you seen? He continued to sob, and when she started to shift her grip, he rammed his bony elbow hard into her gut, sending her flying violently back into Rourke so that they both hit the pavement. Later, she could curse herself for letting him catch her off guard with his sniveling, but for now, she scrambled up, struggling to suck in air, and gave chase. Son of a bitch. She could only think it. He'd knocked the wind out of her, and prevented her from swearing aloud or shouting out an order for him to freeze. She reached for her weapon just as he dove into an underground garage and darted into the forest of vehicles. Shit! She had enough air for that, then snarled at Rourke as he rushed in behind her. Get out, damn it! He's probably not armed, but you're sure as hell not. Call it in if you want to do something. The day I let a pissant banker knock me on my ass and walk away has not come. He veered off to circle around and left her scowling at him. The security lights were blinding, but the opportunity for cover was endless. Echoes of running footsteps bounced off the floor and walls and ceiling. Trusting instinct, she moved left. Weinberg, you aren't helping yourself. You've got assaulting an officer on you now. You come out without making me dig you out, I might cut you a break. Crouched, she swung toward the narrow opening between cars, scanned under, behind, moved on. Rourke, hold still a minute, goddammit, so I can tag location. The echoes softened a bit, allowing her to strain her ears and venture farther to the left at running speed. He was heading up, she decided, hoping to lose himself on the next level. She darted up the first ramp, then whirled and braced, weapon aimed when footsteps pounded behind her. I should have known, was all she said, as Rourke passed her. She dug in and continued pursuit. He's heading up, she snapped out. He keeps going, he'll corner himself. All the idiot has to do is stop, lay low. It could take a fucking platoon to find him in here. He's scared. When you're scared, you run away. He glanced at Eve, and felt ridiculously exhilarated as they hit the next ramp. Or some do. Then the footsteps silenced. Eve threw out an arm to hold Rourke in place, held her breath as she strained to hear. What is that? She whispered. What the hell is that sound? Chanting. Her heart jumped. Jesus Christ! She broke into a fresh run just as one long, terrified scream ripped the air. It seemed to go on endlessly, high and inhuman and horrible. Then it snapped off into silence. She dragged out her communicator without breaking stride. Officer needs assistance! Officer needs assistance! Parking garage 49th and 2nd. Dallas, Lieutenant Eve in pursuit of... God damn it. Dispatch, Dallas, Lieutenant Eve. Please say again. She didn't bother to stare at the body spread in a growing pool of blood on the concrete floor. One glance at the terrified, wide eyes and the carved hilt of a knife plunged into the heart had been enough to determine death. Weinberg had run the wrong way. I need backup immediately. I've got a homicide. Perpetrator or perpetrators possibly still on premises. Dispatch all available units to this address for blockade and search. I need a field kit and my aide. Received. Units en route. Dispatch out. I've got to look, she said to Rourke. Understood. I don't have my clutch piece, or I'd give it to you. I need you to stay here, with the body. Rourke looked down at Weinberg and felt a stir of pity. He's not going anywhere. I need you to stay here, she repeated, in case they come back this way. Don't be a hero. He nodded. You either. She took one last glance at the body. Fuck, she said wearily. I should have had a better grip on him. She moved off slowly, scanning cars and corners, but without much hope. He'd watched her work before, studied and admired the efficient, concentrated field she created around the dead. Rourke wondered if she fully understood why she did it, or how she could, while examining a lifeless, violently dispatched body with such clear-cut objectivity, see through the pity that haunted her eyes. He'd never asked her. He doubted he ever would. He watched her order Peabody to record the scene from a different angle, saw her jerk her thumb at a uniform, obviously a rookie who wasn't holding up well, sending him off on an errand, Rourke imagined, so he could be sick in private. Some of them never got used to the blood or of bladder and bowels releasing with death. The lights were viciously bright, merciless, really. The heart wound had bled profusely. She'd worn heels and a little black suit to the viewing. Of course, she would ruin both now. She was kneeling beside the body, tearing her stockings on the concrete and removing the murder weapon now that the scene had been duly recorded. She sealed it, bagged it for evidence, but he'd gotten a good look at it. The handle was a deep brown, possibly horn of some sort. Yet there was no mistaking its similarity to the one left at the last murder. An athame, the knife of ritual. Bad business. Rourke made a sound of assent as Feeney walked up to him. The man looked uncharacteristically fragile, Rourke observed. Eve was right to be concerned about him. You know anything about it? I'm not getting much buzz except that Dallas was talking to him outside. He ran and ended up dead. That's about it. He seemed nervous about something. Apparently he had reason to be. It wasn't a place they go together, Rourke decided, and shifted away from it. I hope you'll take Eve up on the offer of the house in Mexico. I'll talk it over with my wife. I appreciate it. Then he moved his shoulders. I guess she doesn't need me here. I should get home. But he studied the scene another minute. Behind the fatigue in his eyes lurked the cop. Screwy business. Some guy getting stuck in here? Fancy knife took out that stiff left at your place last night, too, right? The other had a black handle, some sort of metal, I think. Yeah, well... He rocked back on his heels a moment. I'd better head home. He crossed to Eve, careful to avoid getting too close in his untreated shoes. She looked up, distracted, wiping the blood off her sealed hands with a rag, and she watched him walk away until he was out of sight. She rose, raked her not-quite-clean hands through her hair. Bag him, she ordered, and walked to Rourke. I'm going to go in, do the report while it's fresh in my mind. All right. He took her arm. No, you should go home. I'll catch a ride with one of the team. I'll take you. Peabody can catch a ride with one of the team. She needed a few minutes, he knew, to decompress. He touched a button on his wrist unit to signal his driver. I feel stupid going into Central in a limo, she muttered. Really? I don't. He walked her out of the garage, then around to the front of the funeral parlor. The limo streamed up to the curb. You can catch your breath, he suggested as he slid in behind her, and I can have a brandy. He poured one from a crystal decanter, and, knowing Eve, programmed her coffee. Well, since we're going it this way, you can tell me what you know about Weinberg. One of the irritating rich and pampered. She took the hot, rich coffee served in a thin, classy cup of bone china and gave Rourke, his plush limo, his pricey brandy, a long, cool look. You're rich. Yes, he smiled, but pampered? Certainly not. He swirled his brandy, kept smiling. That's what stops me from being irritating. You think so? The coffee helped, got her circuits running. So he was a banker. He ran Weinberg Financial. Hardly. His father still hale and hearty. This little fish would have been more of a minion, the type given busy work and a useless title and a big office. He'd gobble up his expense account, shuffle forms, and have his cosmetician in for weekly sessions. Okay, you didn't like him. I didn't know him, actually. He gave the brandy a lazy swirl and sip. Just the type. I don't have any business dealings with Weinberg. In the dawn of my career, I needed some backing for a couple of projects. Legal projects, he added at Eve's speculative look. They wouldn't let me in the door. I wasn't up to their level of client. So I went elsewhere, got the backing, and made a killing, figuratively speaking. The Weinberg organization took it poorly. So they're a conservative, established, family-run institution. Exactly. It would be embarrassing to have the scion— Would he be like the scion? If there's such a thing as a minor scion, I suppose. Okay, if he went into Satanism, it probably wouldn't go down well at the company picnic. It would turn the board of directors white with shock, and, family or not, this little Weinberg would have been out on his ass. He didn't look like the type to risk it, but you never know. Sex, he said, just for the sex. He could have been one of the ones who had at Alice. Then he's guilty or curious and comes by the viewing. The one thing he was scared. He saw something, Rourke. He saw someone murdered. I know it. If I'd gotten him in, I'd have pulled it out of him. I could have broken him in 10 minutes. Apparently someone else thought so, too. Someone who was right there, on the spot, watching him, watching the viewing. Or watching you, Rourke finished. Which is more likely? I hope they keep watching, because before long I'm going to turn around and bite them on the throat. She glanced up as the limo pulled up to the front of Cop Central. Vaguely embarrassed, she peered out, hoping no cops were loitering nearby. She'd be ragged on for days. I'll see you at home. Couple hours. I'll wait. Don't be ridiculous. Go home. He simply leaned back, ordered the screen to engage, and list the latest stock information. I'll wait, he repeated, and poured another brandy. Hard head, she muttered as she got out, then winced when someone called her name. Woo-wee, Dallas! Gonna slum with us working poor for a while? Bite me, Carter, she muttered, and rushed inside before the delighted laughter forced her to break someone's face. An hour later, she was back, bone-weary and sparking mad. Carter just had it announced over the main that my carriage awaited anon. What an idiot. I don't know whether to kick his ass or yours. Kick his, Rourke suggested, and draped an arm around her. He'd switched from work to pleasure mode and had an old video on screen. She caught the scent of expensive tobacco clinging to the air and wished she could claim it irritated her, but it soothed, along with his arm and the ancient black-and-white video. What is this? Bogart and Bacall. First filmed together. She was 19, I think. Here's the line. Eve stretched out her legs and listened to Bacall ask Bogart if he knew how to whistle. Her lips twitched. Clever. It's a good film. We'll have to watch it all the way through sometime. You're tense, Lieutenant. Maybe. We'll have to fix that. He shifted, poured a stemmed glass full of straw-colored liquid. Drink. What is it? Wine, just wine. She sniffed it suspiciously. He wasn't above doctoring it, she knew. I was going to work a little when we get home. I need my head clear. You have to shut down sometime. Relax. Your head can be clear in the morning. He had a point. She had too much data in her head, and none of it was helping. 4 deaths now, and she was no closer. Maybe if she backed off for a few hours, she'd see better. Whoever did Weinberg was quick and quiet, and smart, going for the heart. Hit the throat like Lobar, and you get blood all over you. Hit the heart, it's over fast and with minimal mess. Mm-hmm. He began to knead the back of her neck. It was always a magnet for her stress. What were we, 30, 40 seconds behind? Fast, really fast. If Weinberg cracked, there could be another. I've got to get the membership list. There has to be a way. She sipped at the wine. What were you and Feeney talking about? Mexico. Stop worrying. Okay. She leaned her head back, closed her eyes for what seemed like 3 seconds. But when she opened them again, they were through the gates and pulling up in front of the house. Did I fall asleep? For about 5 minutes. That was just wine, right? Absolutely. The next part of our program is a hot bath. A bath isn't... She reconsidered as they stepped inside. Actually, that sounds pretty good. 10 minutes later, while water gushed into the tub and swirled in the power of jets, it began to sound better. But she arched a brow when she saw Rourke begin to undress. Who's the bath for? Me or you? Us. He gave her a tap on the butt, nudging her forward. That's fine, then. It'll give you a chance to tell me all about saving the life of a beautiful woman. He slipped into the frothy water, facing her. Oh, I can't be held responsible for actions that took place in a former life. He passed her another glass of wine he'd had the foresight to pour. Now can I? I don't know. Isn't the theory something like you repeat things or learn from them, or don't? She held the glass aloft and dunked herself down, resurfacing with a sigh. You figure you were lovers, or what? Considering, he trailed a fingertip up and down Eve's leg. If she looked then the way she looks now, I'd certainly hope so. She gave him a sour smile. Yeah, I'd guess you'd go for the big, beautiful, exotic type then and now. With a shrug, she drank more wine, then toyed with the stem. Most people figure you stepped wide of the mark with me. Most people? She downed the rest of the wine, set the glass aside. Sure. I get the drift when we've got to make time with some of those rich and high-toned business associates of yours. Can't blame them for wondering what came over you. I'm not big, beautiful, or exotic. No, you're not. Slim, lovely, strong. It's a wonder I looked twice. She felt ridiculous and flustered. He could do that to her just by the way he looked at her. I'm not fishing, she muttered. And it surprises me that you'd give a damn what any of my associates thought of either one of us. I don't. Damn it, she'd stepped right in it. I was just making an observation. The wine's got my tongue running away with me. You annoy me, Eve. His voice was dangerously cool. A warning, she recognized. Criticizing my taste. Forget it. She dunked again, surfaced like a shot when his hands clamped over her waist. Hey, what are you doing? Trying to drown me? She blinked water out of her eyes and saw that his were indeed annoyed. Listen. No, you listen. Or better yet. He crushed his mouth to hers, hot, hungry, hurried. It made the top of her head lift off and spin. We'll just move to the third part of our program a little early, he said when he let her suck in a gulp of air. And I'll show you why I'm precisely on the mark with you, Lieutenant. Precisely. I don't make mistakes. She scowled at him, even as the blood hummed under her skin. That arrogant routine doesn't work for me. I said it was the wine. You won't blame what I can do for you on the wine, he promised. He tilted his hands so that his thumbs traced the vulnerable fold between thigh and crotch. You won't blame it on the wine when I make you scream. I won't scream. But her head fell back as a moan tore through her lips. I can't breathe when you do that. Then don't. Don't breathe. He lifted her up until her breasts were above water and his hands busy below. He dipped, caught one dripping point between his teeth. I'm going to take you. You're going to let me. I don't want to be taken. Unless I take back. But even as her arms came around him, he ripped her to peak, made her body buck and her arms go limp. Not this time. He was suddenly ravenous for her, just this way, limp and open and mindless. How do you do that? Her voice was weak and slurred. He nearly chuckled, though the need was growing painful. Saying nothing, he stood, lifted her. Her eyes fluttered open as he carried her out of the bath. I want you in bed, he said. I want you wet, inside and out. I want to feel your body tremble when I touch you. He laid her down, fastened his mouth on her throat, and taste you. She felt drunk, too loose for control, too pliant for shock, as his hands got busy again. She bucked. She reached for him, but he slipped away, sliding down her damp body, hands fast, mouth urgent. She couldn't keep up. Now her body was tight, a white-knuckled fist ready to strike. She came abruptly, violently, and didn't hear her own scream. He took what he wanted, everything. His blood pounded harder and hotter every time he dragged her over the next edge. Their flesh was wet with sweat now as he drove them both ruthlessly. When the need to be inside of her was unbearable, he pulled her up, parted her legs until they clamped around his waist. And when her arms were around him as well, clinging, Her body trembling hard against his, he gripped her hips and filled her in one deep stroke. His mouth found her breast, felt the wild, ragged beat of her heart beneath the damp flesh. And when she climaxed again, vicing around him like silk-coated iron, he held himself back. "Look at me." He arched her back, watching as her body shuddered, her hips moved. Arousal built fresh as he took himself deeper into her. "Look at me, Eve." He stroked his hands over her, molding each curve again, while he continued to thrust, slow, steady. His breath came in pants. His control vibrated on a thin, fraying wire. She opened her eyes. They were glazed, heavy, but they watched him. "You're the one," he said, and braced himself over her. "You're the only." His mouth swooped down to hers, found it eager and open as he emptied himself into her. For once, he slept first. She lay in the dark, listening to him breathe, stealing a little of his warmth as her own body cooled. Since he was asleep, she stroked his hair. "I love you," she murmured. "I love you so much I'm stupid about it." With a sigh, she settled down, closed her eyes, and willed her mind to empty. Beside her, Rourke smiled into the dark. He never slept first. Chapter 12. In his midtown office, high above the city, Rourke dealt with his last meeting of the morning. As originally scheduled, he should be concluding this business in Rotterdam, but he had arranged to take the meeting holographically so as to remain close to home, close to Eve. He sat at the head of his gleaming conference table, aware that his image sat at a similar one an ocean away. His assistant sat at his left, feeding him the necessary hard copy for his approval and signature. His translator sat on his right as backup, should there be any problem with the computer headset's language program. The board of Scanair filled the other seats, or their images did. It had been a very good year for Rourke Enterprises and its subsidiaries. It had not been a good year, nor a good several years, for Scanair. Rourke was doing them the favor of buying them out. From the stony expressions on several holographic faces, they were not entirely grateful. The company needed to be right-sized, which meant several of the cushier positions would be adjusted in salary and responsibility. Some would be eliminated altogether. He had already hand-picked several men and women who were willing to relocate to Rotterdam and whip the skyline back into shape. As the computer-generated translation of the contract droned in his ears, he watched the faces, the body language. Occasionally, he conferred with his translator for subtleties and syntax. He already knew every phrase, every word of the buyout agreement. He wasn't paying what the board had hoped for. Then again, they had hoped his examination of the company wouldn't turn up some of the more delicate and well-hidden financial difficulties. He couldn't blame them for that. He would have done the same. But his examinations were always thorough and turned up everything. He signed his name on each copy, added the date, then passed the contracts to his assistant for her to witness and seal. She rose, fed the contracts into a laser fax. Seconds later, the copy was across the ocean and being signed by his counterpart. "Congratulations on your retirement, Mr. Vanderley," Rourke said pleasantly when the countersigned and witnessed copies were faxed back to him. "I hope you'll enjoy it." This was acknowledged by a brief nod and a short formal statement. The holograms winked off. Rourke eased back, amused. "People aren't always grateful when you give them large quantities of money, are they, Cairo?" "No, sir." She was tidy, with hair shockingly white and gloriously styled. She rose, taking both the hard copy and the record disc of the transaction for filing. Her trim, rust-colored suit showed off beautifully shaped legs. "They'll be less grateful when you turn Scanair into a financial success. Within a year, I'd say." 10 months. He turned to the translator. "Thank you, Petrov. Your services were invaluable, as always." "My pleasure, sir." He was a droid, created by one of Rourke's science arms. His body was slim, garbed in a well-cut dark suit. His face was attractive, but not distractingly so, and formed to simulate trustworthy middle age. Several of his line were leased by the UN. "Give me an hour, Cairo, before the next. I have some personal business to tend to." "You have a 1 o'clock lunch with the department heads of Skyways to discuss the absorption of Scanair and the publicity strategies. Here or off-site?" "Here, sir, in the executive dining hall. You approved the menu last week." She smiled, in anticipation. "Right, I remember. I'll be there." He moved through the side door and into his office. Before going to the desk, he engaged locks. It wasn't strictly necessary. Cairo would never come in unannounced, but it paid in certain areas to be cautious. The work he intended to do couldn't go on his log. He would have preferred to handle it at home, but he was squeezed for time, and so, he thought, was Eve. At his desk unit, he engaged the jamming field that would block any scan by CompuGuard. The law frowned on unauthorized hacking, and the penalties were stiff. "Computer, membership data, Church of Satan, New York City branch, under direction of Selena Cross." "Working." "That data is protected under Religious Privacy Act. Request denied." Rourke only smiled. He always preferred a challenge. "Oh, well, I think we can change our mind about that." Prepared to enjoy himself, he slipped off his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and got to work. Down, Eve paced Dr. Mira's pretty, designed-to-soothe office. She was never completely relaxed there. She trusted Mira's judgment. She always had. More recently, she had come to trust the doctor on a personal level, as much as it was possible. But it didn't make her relax. Mira knew more about her than anyone. More, Eve suspected, than she knew about herself. Facing someone with that kind of intimate knowledge wasn't relaxing. But she hadn't come to talk about personal matters, Eve reminded herself. She was here to talk about murder. Mira opened the door and stepped in. Her smile was slow and warm and personal. She always looked so perfect, Eve decided. Never too glossy, never undone, never less than competent. Today, instead of her customary suit, Mira wore a slim, pumpkin-colored dress with a single-button matching coat of the same above-the-knee length. Her shoes were of a slightly darker tone and boasted the skinny heels that Eve always marveled a woman would wear by choice. Mira offered both hands, a gesture of affection that simultaneously baffled and pleased Eve. "It's good to see you back in fighting shape, Eve. No problem with the knee?" "Oh?" With a faint frown, Eve glanced down, remembering the injury she'd suffered while closing a recent case. "No, the MTs did a good job. I'd forgotten about it." "A side effect of your job." Mira settled in one of her scoop chairs. "I'd think it would be a bit like childbirth." "Excuse me?" "The ability to forget the pain, the trauma to both body and mind, and go on to do the same thing again. I've always believed women make good cops and doctors because they're inherently resilient that way. Won't you sit, have some tea, tell me what I can do for you?" "I appreciate you fitting me in." Eve sat, shifted restlessly. She always felt inclined to bare her soul once she was settled in this room with this woman. "It's about a case I'm working on. I can't give you many details. There's an internal block." "I see." Mira programmed tea. "Tell me what you can." "One subject is a young woman, 18, very bright and apparently very impressionable." "It's an age for explorations." Mira took out the tea, steaming fragrantly in delicate china cups, offered one to Eve. Eve would drink it, but she wouldn't particularly like it. "I suppose. The subject has family, close family. Though the father is out of the picture, there is extended family, grandparents, cousins, that kind of thing. She isn't, Eve corrected, alone." Mira nodded. Eve had been alone, she thought, brutally alone. The subject had an interest in ancient religions and cultures, was studying same. Over the past year, she developed a certain interest in the occult. That's also fairly typical. Youth often explores various creeds and beliefs in order to find and cement their own. The occult, with its mystique and its possibilities, is very attractive. She became involved in Satanism. As a dabbler? Eve frowned. She'd expected Mira to show some surprise or disapproval. Instead, she was sipping tea with that slight, attentive smile playing around her mouth. If that means was she toying with it, I'd say she went deeper. Initiated? I'm not sure what that involves. Depending on the sect, there would be slight variations. Broadly, it would entail a waiting period, the taking of vows, a physical mark on the body, generally on or near the genitalia. The initiate would be accepted into the coven with a ceremony. There would be an altar, a human one, probably female, within a circle. The princes of hell would be called, while the initiate or initiates knelt. Symbolism would include flame, smoke, the ringing of a bell, graveyard dirt, preferably from an infant. They would be given water or wine mixed with urine to drink. Then the high priest or priestess would mark the initiate with a ceremonial knife. An athame. Yes, Mira smiled, as though pleased with a bright student. And though it's illegal, if the coven is able, they will then sacrifice a young goat. With some, the blood of the goat is mixed with wine and consumed. Once done, the coven engages in sex. The altar may be used by all or many. It would be considered both a duty and a pleasure. Sounds like you've been there. No, but I was allowed to observe a Sabbath ceremony once. It was quite fascinating. You don't actually believe that stuff. Stunned, Eve set the cup aside. Calling up the devil? Mira lifted a smoothly arched brow. I believe in good and evil, Eve, and I don't by any means discount the likelihood of an ultimate good or an ultimate evil. In my profession and yours, we see too much of both to deny it. Humans committed evil, Eve thought. Evil was human. But devil worship? Those who choose to focus their lives and, shall we say, souls, on this creed generally do so for its freedom, its structure, and its celebration of selfishness. Others are seduced by the promise of power, and many by the sex. It was just sex. That's what Weinberg had said, had sobbed, Eve remembered, before he died. Your young woman, Eve, was likely drawn in first by the intellect. Satanism is centuries old, and like most pagan religions, predates Christianity. Why does it survive, and in some eras, even prosper? It's filled with secrets and sins and sex. Its rites are mysterious and elaborate. She would have wondered, and coming from a close and likely sheltered home life, was at an age ripe for rebellions against the status quo. The ceremony you described was similar to one she described to me, but she had only begun to observe, and she was sexually used. She was a virgin, and was, I suspect, drugged. I see. There are always sects that diverge from the established rules of law. Some can be dangerous. She had blanks, time losses, and became almost slavishly devoted to two of the members. She backed away from her family and her studies, until she witnessed the ritual murder of a child. Human sacrifice is an old practice, and a deplorable one. Mira sipped delicately. If drugs were involved, it's highly possible she was made an addict, dependent upon these people. That would explain the blanks. I take it the murder she witnessed shocked her away from the cult and its rituals. She was terrified. She didn't go to her family, didn't report the incident. She ran to a witch. A white witch? A Wiccan? Eve compressed her lips. She did what I expect would be considered a religious 180, started burning white candles instead of black, and she lived in terror, claimed that one of the membership could turn into a raven. Shape-shifting. Thoughtfully, Mira rose to program more tea. Interesting. She believed they would kill her, had killed someone close to her, though that death is, for now, officially listed under natural causes. I have no doubt they tormented her, found a way to play on her delusions and fears. I'm thinking some of that came from her own sense of guilt and shame. You could be right. Emotions influence the intellect. Just how much? Eve demanded. Enough for her to see things that weren't there? Enough for her to run from an illusion into the path of an oncoming car and kill herself? Mira sat again. She's dead, then. I'm sorry. Are you quite sure she ran from an illusion? A trained observer was on the scene. There was nothing there, except, Eve added with a twist of her lips, a black cat. The traditional familiar. That alone might have been enough to push her over the edge. Even if the cat was planted in order to frighten her, you would have a difficult time terming it homicide. They played on her mind, drugged her, possibly used hypnosis. They tormented her with tricks and link transmissions. Then they pushed her over. Damned if that isn't murder, and I will make it stick. Taking religion, particularly religions the masses don't wish to acknowledge, into court won't be easy. I don't care about easy. The people behind this cult are dirty, and I believe they've killed 4 people in the last 2 weeks. 4. Mira paused, set the cup down. The body that was left near your home. The details in the media were sketchy. It's connected. Yeah, he was an initiate, and he had his throat slit by an athame. It was left in him, stuck in his groin with a note that condemned Satanism. He was strapped to an inverted pentagram. Mutilation and murder. Mira pursed her lips. If it was Wiccans, it's very much out of character, very much against their creed. People do things out of character and against their creeds all the time, Eve said impatiently. But at this time, I suspect a member or members of his own cult. Another man was killed last night with an athame. We held it from the morning reports, but it'll be all over the media within a couple of hours. I was on scene, chasing him down. I didn't run fast enough. He was killed quickly, without ritual? With a police officer in pursuit? Mira shook her head. A desperate or arrogant move. If this was committed by the same people, it shows a growing boldness. And maybe a taste for it. Blood becomes addictive. I want to know where the weaknesses are in the kind of personality who runs a cult like this. I've got a female, long yellow sheet involving illegal sex and drug trafficking. Bisexual. She heads up the club, lives well. Her companion is a well-built male who caters to her. She likes to show off, Eve added, remembering the fire trick. She claims to be clairvoyant. She's edgy, with a slippery temper. Pride would likely be the first weakness. If she's in a position of power and authority, she would likely take disrespect badly. Is she clairvoyant? Are you serious? Eve, Mira sighed lightly. Psychic abilities exist, and always have. Studies have established that. Yeah. Eve waved a hand in dismissal. The Kaczynski Institute, for one. I've got a detailed report on the White Witch from there. They claim she's off the charts. And you don't agree with the Kaczynski Institute? Crystal balls and palm reading? You're a scientist. Yes, I am, and as such, I accept that science is fluid. It changes as we learn more about the universe and what inhabits it. Many well-respected scientists believe that we're born with what we can term this sixth sense, or a heightened sense, if you will. Some develop it, some block it. Most of us retain at least some level. We'd call it instinct, hunches, intuition. You rely on that yourself. I rely on evidence, on facts. You have hunches, Eve, and your intuition is a finely crafted tool. And Rourke. She smiled when Eve's brows drew together. A man doesn't rise so high so young without a strong instinct for making the right move at the right time. Magic, if you want to use a more romantic term, exists. You're telling me you believe in mind-reading and spell-casting. I can intuit what's going through your mind right now. Mira chuckled, finished her tea. Mira, your thinking is full of shit. Eve's lips curved in a reluctant smile of her own. Close enough. Let me say this, since I believe it's part of what you came here for. Witchcraft, black and white, has existed since the dawn of humanity. And where there is power, there is benefit, and there is abuse. That, too, is the nature of humanity. We can't, through all our scientific and technical skill, destroy one without damaging the other. Power requires tending, as do beliefs, so we have our ceremonies and our rituals. We need the structure, the comfort, and, yes, the mystery of them. I don't have any problem with ceremonies and rituals, Dr. Mira, unless they cross the line of the law. I would agree, but the law can also be fluid. It changes, adapts. Murder stays murder, whether it's accomplished with a stone spear or a laser blast. Her eyes were dark and fierce, or whether it's done with smoke and mirrors. I'll find the perpetrator, and no magic in the world is going to stop me. No. A small niggling fear, what might have been called a hunch, knotted in Mira's gut. I would agree with that as well. You're not without power, Eve, and you'll match yours against this. She folded her hands. I can provide you with a more detailed analysis on both Satanism and Wicca, if it might help. I'd like to know what I'm dealing with. I'd appreciate it. Can you give me a profile of a typical member of both cults? There isn't a typical member, any more than there are typical members of the Catholic faith or of Buddhism, but I can generalize certain personality types who are often attracted to the occult. The Wiccan the young woman went to. Is she a suspect? She's not the prime, but she's a suspect. Revenge is a strong motive, and if Satanists keep ending up with a ritual knife in vital organs, I won't overlook revenge. Unable to resist, Eve ran her tongue over her teeth. But I suppose she's more likely to put a curse on them. Check the nails and hair of your victims, or of any subsequent ones. If a curse is involved, there should be signs of recent snippings. Yeah? I'll do that. Eve rose. I appreciate the help. I'll get you a report by tomorrow. Great. She started out, paused. You seem to know a lot about all of this. Is it the kind of thing you study for psychiatry? To some extent, but I have a more personal interest, and studied fairly extensively. Her lips curved. My daughter is Wiccan. Eve's jaw dropped. Oh, what the hell did she say now? Well, I guess that explains it. Uncomfortable, she dug her hands into her pockets. Around here? No, she lives in New Orleans. She finds it less restrictive there. I may be a bit unobjective on the matter, Eve, under the circumstances, but I think you'll find it's a lovely faith. Very earthy and generous. Sure. Eve edged for the door. I'm going to observe a meeting tomorrow night. You'll have to let me know what you think. And if you have questions I'm unable to answer, I'm sure my daughter would be happy to speak with you. I'll let you know. She headed to the elevator, blowing out a long breath. Mira's daughter was a witch, for Christ's sake, she thought. That was a hell of a capper. She headed back to Central with the intention of rounding up Peabody, then heading to Weinberg's townhouse. She wanted to get a look at his lifestyle, his logs, and his personal records. She had a feeling a drone like him would have kept some private list of names and places. The sweepers had already been through, routinely, and had turned up nothing of particular interest, but she could get lucky. She passed Peabody in the bullpen as she swung through. My vehicle, 15 minutes. I want to check my messages, make a couple of calls. Yes, sir. Lieutenant, later, Eve said shortly, hurrying by and missing Peabody's wince. The reason for it was waiting in her office. Feeney? She tugged her jacket off, tossed it on a chair. You decide to head to Mexico? You're going to need to call Rourke for the details. He should... She broke off when Feeney stood up, walked over, and shut her door. It had only taken one look at his face to know. You lied to me. There was a quaver in his voice that came as much from hurt as anger. But his eyes were flat and cold. You fucking lied to me. I trusted you. You've been investigating Frank behind my back, over his own dead body. There was no point in denying, less in asking how he'd found out. She'd known he would. There was going to be an internal investigation. Whitney wanted me to clear him, and that's what I've done. Internal investigation, my ass! Nobody was cleaner than Frank. I know that, Feeney. But you investigated. You went through his records, and you did it around me. That's the way it had to be. Bullshit! I goddamn trained you. You'd still be in uniform if I hadn't put you here. And you backstab me. He stepped closer, fists clenched at his sides. She preferred him to use them. You've got Alice's file open. Suspected homicide. She was my goddaughter, and you don't tell me you think some son of a bitch killed her? You block me out of the investigation. You lied to me. You looked right in my face and lied to me. Her stomach had gone to ice. Yes. You think she'd been drugged and raped and murdered, and you don't take me in? He'd gotten into the records, the reports, she realized. They'd been sealed and coded, but that wouldn't have stopped him if he'd gotten a whiff. And, she decided, he'd gotten one the night before, over Weinberg's body. I couldn't, she said in a flat voice. Even if I hadn't been under orders, I couldn't. You were too close. You can't objectively assist on an investigation involving family. What the hell do you know about family? He exploded and made her jerk. Yes, she'd have preferred his fists. Orders? He continued, bitterness spewing out and scalding her. Fucking orders? Is that your line, Dallas? Is that your reason for treating me like some lame rookie? Take a vacation, Feeney. Use my rich husband's fancy house in Mexico. His lips peeled back in a sneer. That would have been fine for you, wouldn't it? Get me out of your way. Shuffle me off and out from underfoot because I'm useless to you on this one. No, God, Feeney, I've gone through doors with you. His voice was abruptly quiet and made her throat burn. I trusted you. I'd have put my back up against yours any time, any place. But no more. You're good, Dallas, but you're cold. The hell with you. She said nothing when he walked out, leaving her door swinging open. Could say nothing. He'd nailed it, she decided, and he'd nailed her. Dallas. Peabody rushed the door. I couldn't. Eve cut her off, simply lifting a finger, turning her back. Slowly, with slow, even breaths, she pulled her guts back in. And then they ached. She could still smell him in the room, that stupid cologne his wife always bought him. We're going to do a follow-up sweep of Weinberg's townhouse. Get your gear. Peabody opened her mouth, closed it again. Even if she'd known what to say, she didn't imagine it would be welcome. Yes, sir. Eve turned back. Her eyes were blank, cool, composed. Then let's move. Chapter 13. She was in a pisser of a mood by the time she got home. She'd turned Weinberg's townhouse inside out, reworking every step already taken by the sweepers. For 3 hours, she and Peabody had searched closets and drawers, run logs, and traced link records. She found 24 all but identical dark suits, shoes so glossy she'd seen her own scowl reflected in the tips, an incredibly boring collection of music discs. Though he'd had a lockbox, the contents hadn't been very illuminating. 2,000 in cash, another 10 in credits, and an extensive collection of hardcore pornographic videos might have given some insight into the man, but no solid leads toward his killer. He'd kept no personal diary, and his appointment book listed times and dates and very little about the content of any meeting, personal or professional. His financial records were ordered and precise, as one might expect from a man who dealt with money as an occupation. All expenses and income were carefully logged. Though the large and regular bi-monthly withdrawals from credit into cash over the last 2-year period of Weinberg's fussy life gave Eve a solid notion just how Selina managed to live so well, the withdrawals were all logged under personal expenses. The consistency of late-night appointments over the last 2 years, again bi-monthly, and always on the same date as the personal cash withdrawal, wasn't enough to establish a solid connection with Selina Cross's cult. The lady herself was never mentioned. He'd been divorced, childless, and he'd lived alone. So she'd knocked on doors, talked to neighbors. Eve learned Weinberg hadn't been the sociable sort. He'd rarely had visitors, and none of his neighbors had been curious enough or would admit to paying close enough attention to any of those rare visitors to give a description. She came away with nothing but a raw feeling in the gut and a mounting sense of frustration. She knew, without a doubt, that Weinberg had been part of Cross's cult, that he'd paid heavily, first monetarily, and then with his life, for the privilege. But she was no closer to proving it, and her mind wasn't as focused on the business at hand as it should have been. When she headed home, alone, Feeney's angry face and bitter words played back in her head, and frustration slammed up hard against misery. She'd more than let him down, she knew. She had betrayed him by doing precisely what he had helped train her to do. She'd followed orders, she'd been a cop, she'd done her job. But she hadn't been a friend, she thought, as her temples throbbed with stress. She'd weighed her loyalties, and in the end had chosen the job over the heart. Cold, he'd called her, she remembered, and squeezed her eyes shut. And cold she had been. The cat padded to her the moment Eve stepped in the door, winding around her legs as she stepped into the foyer. She kept walking, cursing lightly when he tripped her. Somerset slipped out of a doorway. "Rourke has been trying to reach you." "Yeah, well, I've been busy." She nudged Galahad away impatiently with her foot. "Is he here?" "Not as yet. You might reach him at his office." "I'll talk to him when he gets home." She wanted a drink, something strong and mind-misting. Recognizing the danger and the weakness of that crutch, she turned away from the parlor and walked in the opposite direction. "I'm not here to anybody else, get it?" "Certainly," Somerset said stiffly. As she strode away, Somerset bent and picked up the cat to stroke, something he never would have done had anyone been around to observe. "The lieutenant is very unhappy," Somerset murmured. "Perhaps we should make a call." Galahad purred, stretched his neck in appreciation of Somerset's long, bony fingers. Their mutual affection was their little secret. It would have surprised Eve, though she wasn't thinking of either of them. She took the stairs, moved through the indoor pool and garden area, and into the gym. Physical exertion, she knew, blocked emotional distress. Keeping her mind blank, she changed into a black skin suit and high tops. She programmed the full-body unit, ordering the machine to take her through a brutal series of reps and resistance exercises, gritting her teeth as the clipped computer voice demanded that she squat, lift, stretch, hold, repeat. She'd worked up a satisfactory sweat by the time she switched machines for aerobics. The combo unit took her on a punishing run, up inclines, down them, a race up endless flights of stairs. She'd set it for 80 and found the change of texture on a running surface, from simulated asphalt to sand to grass to dirt, interesting, but it wasn't doing anything to ease the ache in her belly. You could run, she thought with dull fury, but you couldn't hide. Her heart was pumping hard, her skin suit soaked with sweat, but her emotions were still fragile as glass. What she needed, Eve decided, as she tugged on soft, protective gloves, was to pound on something. She'd never tried out the sparring droid. It was one of Rourke's newest toys. The unit was a middleweight, 6 feet, 190, and firmly muscled. Good reach, Eve decided, with her hands on her hips as she sized him up. She punched in the code on his storage tube. There was a faint hum as circuits were engaged. The unit opened dark, polite brown eyes. "You wish a match?" "Yeah, pal, I wish a match." "Boxing, karate, Korean or Japanese, taekwondo, kung fu, street style. Self-defense programs are also available. Contact is optional." "Straight hand-to-hand," she said, backing up and gesturing. "Full contact." "Timed rounds?" "Hell no. We go till one of us is down, pal, and out." She curled her fingers in a come-ahead gesture. "Acknowledged." There was a faint humming from the unit as he self-programmed. "I outweigh you by approximately 70 pounds. If you prefer, my program includes a handicap." She brought her fist up hard and fast, an uppercut to the jaw that snapped his head back. "There's my handicap. Come on." "As you wish." He crouched, as she did, and began to circle. "You did not indicate if you desired vocal additions to the program. Taunting, insults—" He staggered back as her foot whipped up and plowed into his guts. "Compliments or suitable exclamations of pain are available." "Come at me, will you, for Christ's sake?" He did, with a swiftness and force that had her stumbling back, nearly losing her footing. This, she decided, as she pivoted and caught him backhanded, was more like it. He blocked her next blow, shifted weight, and wrapped his arm around her throat. Eve planted her feet, elbowed, and flipped him over her shoulder. He was up like lightning before she could attempt a pin. His gloved fist made a solid connection with her solar plexus, pushing a whoosh of air out of her lungs and ringing bright pain straight into her head. Doubled over,